All right, we'll call this meeting to order, June 18th, 2024. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, good morning, everyone. We do have a quorum present today with all 5 commissioners in attendance. Commissioners, if you've had a chance to review the agenda and there are no changes, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moving right along under tab A this morning, we've got 3 budget amendments. We need to have 3 public hearings on those. First being resolution 2406 CL01, a budget amendment for the Sweetwater County Events Complex capital budget. With us this morning is accounting specialist Rebecca Romero. And good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. How are you?
We're ready for another workshop.
I was gonna say, yeah, and it's not scheduled till later in the afternoon, so it definitely will be a long day. So the first amendment that I have is for the events complex. It's regarding the roofing project. Last year, the capital bid for that come in at 100,000 more than they had anticipated, and at that time we agreed to pay half. That was never corrected in the general fund, so I'm asking now that we transfer $54,846 from the general reserves into the capital projects for the events complex.
Thanks, Rebecca. Questions, commissioners? If not, we do need to open this up for public hearings. So at this time, if there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this budget amendment, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06 CL-01 Sweetwater County Budget Amendment.
Do you have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richards? Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Second by Commissioner Toman. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Candy. Next up is resolution 2406 CL02, a budget amendment for the Sweetwater County Treasurer's operating budget. And we'll hand it back to Rebecca.
This budget is due to anticipated operating expenditures, mostly the postage. The postage has gone up quite a bit this year. In addition, our treasurer would like to send out some more postcards regarding the new license plates and things like that. So we're asking for a 10,000 increase to his general operating funds, and we need to take that out of the reserves.
Thanks, Rebecca. Questions, commissioners?
I don't have any questions, I guess, maybe just a comment. The events complex was agreed to be paid last year, so I can go along with that, but in light of what we're facing with the budget, I'm not sure new requests are really a great idea right now. I realize it's only $10,000 and I agree with the program and everything he's trying to get accomplished, but just having a hard time agreeing to this one.
Yeah, I received a call from Treasurer Cowan after our last workshop, so it's great timing on his part. But I said, well, bring it before us, and as a group, we'll have a conversation on it. I think the intent behind it is with the new e-registration for the license and registration program that was passed at the legislature, that he would get that out in some form of a mailer to inform public on a countywide basis. So that's the intent. But Mark, did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, that definitely is part of it. We are already, we've already
exceeded our budget in postage this year anyways, because of the postage increases. So part of that is there. A couple thousand of this will be for the new postcards that will be talking about that July 1st, the e-registration 30-day grace period. So we're trying to move people over to doing electronic registration as much as possible so that we can eliminate the lines and eliminate people coming into the office from our broad county. So that's the point.
I just want, and I understand the July cutoff.
Sure.
Is there any way, can you hold off for a little while before you send these out? I mean, I know we're getting pretty nitpicky here over, maybe now it's a couple $1,000s and I feel horrible for saying that, but in light of the numbers we've been handed in the last few days.
Yeah.
We certainly could do that. Commissioner Jones, I would say that we've already expended our budget for postage. And so we do have to have a budget amendment anyways. And so, you know, I think that if we did a budget amendment for $5,000, that would cover that. And then we could put it into next year's budget for those postcards. So.
I guess on that, I mean, since we're only a couple weeks away, can you even pull it off this fiscal year anyway, as far as the other 5,000, or would that roll carry over into next
No.
fiscal year?
It wouldn't carry over, and we could pull it off. I've got everything lined up to do it, but it's not that big a deal to me, really. I mean, so what we did, we've pulled funds from our capital account this year in order to fund the shortfall on our budget for postage. And so we do have to have that budget amendment to fix that. But for the postcards, no big deal. We'll just put it into next year. And if we have to do a budget amendment next year, or we decide not to do the postcards, that's fine too. So.
Okay.
I do love the idea. I mean, I love everything you're doing with it. So it doesn't.
I appreciate that. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I know this budget's tight. I've watched the cycle and we've had some good conversations in our office about it as well. So.
Follow up, Commissioner Slaughter?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say, you know, I think in looking at what the treasurer is trying to do, as active as he's been in trying to get this electronic registration process in place, and as active as he was with the legislature, I'd like to commend him on that. I think, you know, having been there, you know, I think it's something that's going to be a huge benefit both for the public and for us. So I think it's a good thing. I agree with the comments of Commissioner Jones. But if we can amend this and just fund the current deficit that you've got and then see this in the next year, I would be supportive of that.
And I'm good with that as well, Chairman Commissioner Slaughter.
That was 5,000, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Further comments or questions, commissioners? Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
We will now open this up for a public hearing on Resolution 2406 CL02. This is a budget amendment for the County Treasurer's Office. If there's anyone online or in the audience who would like to approach the governing body, now would be the appropriate time on this matter. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Toman,
I would make a motion to fund the current deficit of $5,000. Amend the resolution to say 5 instead of 10, if that's the correct intent.
we do have a motion to approve Resolution 2406 CL02 in the amount of $5,000, amending the original proposal of $10,000 by Commissioner Toman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous.
I expect to get my license plate free today. Oh, just kidding.
We got plenty of that. This will move us right along into item number 3 under tab A, Commissioners. We've got Resolution 2406 CL03, another budget amendment for the county coroner's operating budget, and we'll hand it back to Rebecca.
Yes, so there have been some more unanticipated operating expenditures for the coroner's office, particularly in the medical examining field. This really isn't something that we can control, so we need to move 3,000 into his fund and take it out of the general reserves.
Thanks, Rebecca. Questions on this amendment, commissioners, or comments?
I don't want a free autopsy, so I don't think I would comment on that one.
If not, we do need to have a public hearing on this. So at this time, if there's anyone online or in the audience that would like to address the governing body on this budget amendment for the county coroner's office, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06-CL-03.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose nay. Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Next up is tab B, commissioners, and before us this morning, we've got 5 different items and public hearings from the Planning and Zoning Office. First being the approval of Resolution 2406-Z001, a variance application for a 5.2 foot encroachment into the 25-foot front setback from Section 5G of the 2015 zoning resolution requested by Richard Vassa with Searle Brothers Construction Incorporated. And at this time, we'll hand it over to County Planner Cassidy Brown. Good morning, Cassidy.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our first, let's see, oh, did this to me last time too. Didn't want to go. There we go. So the property that we're looking at for our first variance here for Searle Brothers Construction with the applicant Richard Vassa is located at 160 Pollux Drive in Rock Springs, and it is currently zoned as light industrial within the growth management area. And we do have our zoning map here, so you can see that they are within a light industrial zone district, but then there's also some residential area around as well. And then we have an aerial view of our site that we're looking at today. So for some background information here on why we're looking for a variance today, or why the applicant is looking for a variance. I do have this blurb, but I also have it in the next pictures. So this is all in the packet and everything for you guys, but I'm just going to go to the pictures. I think they illustrate a little bit more to give you that background information. So if we look at this first permit here that we have on the left, it's from 1979, and this is for the original shop building that's on the property. And from the drawing, we can see that they originally had it to where it was set back 40 feet from the west property line, and that it's oriented just straight directly on the property. Then we have another permit that came in 1997. And with that, they proposed to have an addition right here. So this is just some office space that was added on. And in that, it put us 25 feet, 6 inches from that property line. So they would still be within those setbacks as required. So within that 25-foot setback, they exceed that. However, where we get into our issue is when we look at the most current site map drawing that we received, we can see that the actual building was built kind of at an angle on the property. And so it wasn't straight on. And then it also wasn't quite that 40 feet from the setback or from the west property line. Sorry. It was actually 33 feet. And so that puts the numbers off as, time went on. So what Searle Brothers is wanting to do now is just to square off the building. So this yellow section here is what they're wanting to add to the building. However, because the building is at that angle and because they're closer to the property line than we initially thought, they'll be 19.8 feet away from the west property line instead of the required 25. So we do have our site photos, view to the north, south, west, and east here. And then also our public notice sign that was posted on 5/23/2024. And then our review criteria that we looked at, we have 3. So for our variance, the first is just that the reason we need a variance is not because of the applicant, any of other actions. And, when we look at that site map that we just received, the newest one, we see that the property, the shop that was built on the property wasn't constructed exactly how it was proposed on the original permit. And then that didn't get caught and it wasn't accounted for on the next permit that we received in 1997. And so, why we find that it is the responsibility of the property owner to make sure that all of those setback requirements are met. The land use department at the time did not go and field verify the accuracy of the permit after the construction was completed. So there's some fault on both parts there. Our second criteria that we looked at is sort of in 3 parts here. So the first is, would this deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land or building if the variance is not granted? Second, is it a necessary or reasonable use? And then third, is this the minimum adjustment that would be required and needed for them to accomplish their purpose? And so staff did find that the request to square off the building there is a reasonable use of property and that the adjustment is the minimum necessary to fulfill the request. Also, if the variance is not granted, then that office addition that was added on in 1997 would need to be removed from the building because it would be in violation. And that would present a hardship to the property owner. The final item that we looked at is just if the granting of the variance is in harmony with the zoning resolution. And we found that there have been no voiced concerns about the shop being within that setback. And it has been in the setback since 1997. And as such, the granting of the variance won't likely be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental at all to public welfare. One thing also to keep in mind is just that once the new addition is added on there, the building will be inspected and it will be held to meet all of international fire codes as well. We had 2 our agency comments, one from Mark Berry with Lumen and one from Jared Martin with Marathon. Both said no conflict. And at the June 12th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the P&Z Commission voted 3-0 to recommend the recommendation for a variance application of 5.2 feet encroachment into the 25-foot front setback with the staff condition that we recommended, which was that the variance is only to apply specifically to the proposed addition and to the office addition from 1997, and it does not apply to any other structure.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Cassidy. Commissioner Tillman?
The question is, are they going to be doing some new building to square up things? Are they actually doing new construction to square up the office?
Yes, so they would just be adding on this very small space right here, the yellow. I know it's hard to see from there, but they would be building to square that up.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff on this variance presentation, commissioners? If not, we do need to open this up for a public hearing. So at this time, if there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to address the governing body on this proposed variance, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06-0O-01 for the approval of a variance application for 5.2 feet encroachment into the 25-foot front setback from section 5.G of the 2015 zoning resolution.
We have a motion to approve the resolution by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Cassidy. Moving right along, Commissioners, under tab B is item number 2. We've got the approval of resolution 2406-Z002, a zoning map amendment from heavy industrial I2 to high density residential R3, requested by Brian Marincic with 191 LLC. At this time, we'll hand it over to our GIS planner, Megan Toomer. Good morning, Megan.
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. We'll jump right into this zone map amendment. The property owner is Red Horse Oil Company with Brian Marenzik, 191 LLC, being the applicant. We're looking at approximately 8.41 acres located just to the northeast of where the Justice Center is located, which you'll see here in the next slide here shortly. The current zoning of the property is I2, which is heavy industrial. And this property also lies within the growth management area. Couple things to note with infrastructure. Fire District number 1 is the responding agency, and there is frontage along US Highway 191 South. And infrastructure exists within the area, but not directly to said property. They reside within the West Side Water and Sewer District, which would be who would provide sewer, and the city of Rock Springs would be providing water if infrastructure got built out that far. And also Rocky Mountain Power, of course, would provide power. A little bit of background on this, because you guys haven't heard probably much about this property as much as staff has. Brian and his team have submitted a sketch plat for Wilkins Peak subdivision to the department, proposing a 7-phase residential subdivision. It's consisting of approximately 233 to 269 lots. This ranges due to, depending on how many of these lots would be used for townhome development, to where I would say most of the lots are 80 by 100 feet to allow for single family residential, but then could go to smaller 40 by 100 foot to allow for more townhome development. So staff has seen a sketch plat with this, and the applicant is wanting to move forward, is wanting to make sure in order to move forward further in the subdivision process that the zoning is not going to be an issue. So that's why he's here today. And he believes that this zone change would help to better serve the community by helping to create more affordable residential housing. As you can see with the zone map, heavy industrial is pretty much surrounding the area to the northwest and a little bit to the south, where you've got ag and MD2 overlay just to the east. As you can see here, this is, as I mentioned, where the Justice Center is located. A little bit more zoomed in aerial view, you can see there are some pretty good drainage areas located across the property, and the property does kind of slope away from the highway. We've properly posted public notice and did so on May 23rd of this year. We'll jump straight into the 6 review criteria. The first, is it consistent and compatible with the current zoning resolution and comprehensive plan? Staff, in reviewing our resolution for R3 zone, which is high density residential, states that this zone should be applied judiciously where infrastructure exists. Currently, water and sewer and infrastructure exists within the area, but is not serviced to said properly directly. Criteria number 2, is it proposed zoning suitable for existing topography and creating buildable lots? Staff does find that it's suitable for residential use. However, major drainages are located there, and this is something that can be taken care of during the subdivision process. Criteria number 3, is it compatible with existing or allowable uses of adjacent agencies? Staff does have some concerns about potential heavy industrial development that could be established on adjacent properties in the future. Right now it's vacant. This is something that we would like the applicant to consider, is thinking about buffering and potential screening to lessen the impact that future industry could have if something were to be developed within the area. Something that was discussed at the planning and zoning meeting last week was the applicant and his team have thought about doing some trees for buffering on the north side and along the west side, which is where the highway's at. So it is something that they are thinking about, wanting to create a cohesive residential community out there. So that is something that staff is glad to see that discussions are already happening on. Criteria number 4, can the proposed zoning demonstrate adequate facilities, including roads, drainage, potable water, sanitary sewer, police, and fire protection will exist or will serve to exist the request at such times facilities are needed. The applicant will need to work with the appropriate agencies to address all of these requirements, as no infrastructure resides currently to the property. This is something that was made pretty clear when we put out for agency review for the sketch plat process, and is something that the applicants is aware of. So this is something I think that can be happened through the subdivision process, as long as those communications are had before time and with the appropriate agencies to keep development moving forward, knowing that there will be caveats by other agencies just because of how the county is set up. You don't have water and sewer districts within the city, so that's a little bit different. Same thing with just kind of the general area that it's located within. It's not as easy to develop, but that's not something that staff has a concern about, because if someone wants to spend the time and money to do so, that is well within their rights to do so, and something that we think can be taken care of through the steps of the subdivision process as well, with the input from other agencies. The amendment shall not adversely affect adjacent properties, communities, or health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Sweetwater County. Staff does not find this amendment will adversely affect adjacent properties because it's going from a less restrictive zone district to a more restrictive zone district. I would say most of our residential, actually all of our residential zone districts are going to be more restrictive than what we will have in any of the industrial or commercial zone districts, just because the nature of what residential development brings. And staff does find that the request conforms with all applicable provisions of this resolution, and the minimum district size of 5 acres is going to be well exceeded. We received 2 agency comments from Lumen and Marathon, both of which have no conflict. And we did have a little bit of discussion at the planning and zoning meeting, in which the applicant that was present was Sean Arnoldi, and we discussed a time frame that we would like to impose as a condition, to where if for whatever reason the subdivision development doesn't happen within a certain time frame, that the zoning would revert back from R3 and go back to the heavy industrial, which it's currently zoned. Staff and the applicant were both amenable to a 3-year time frame. And just for clarification purposes, as long as the subdivision construction process has started within this 3 years, the residential R3 zone will stay. So at the June 12th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 3-0 to recommend the resolution of zone map amendment from heavy industrial to high density residential, requested by Brian Marinzik, with the following condition: a 3-year time frame for said property to be developed into a subdivision. If no subdivision development starts within this time frame, the zoning will then revert to the previous zoning of heavy industrial. That's all I have, Chairman West, and I believe Brian is here in attendance as well today.
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate the detailed report there. Questions on this zoning map amendment, commissioners? Questions for staff or the applicant, I should have said. I have one for staff. Is there, I know you said there's more restrictions with an R3 zoning, but I can't help but think about noise, for instance, like coming down 191, with J-break and whatever else may be in the area. I can't remember exactly where the speed limit changes there. I mean, obviously with adding a residential subdivision in there, is there concern for that, or can you speak to that at all?
I would say there's going to be concern. I mean, you've got a highway right off of that. Something to note is the developments just in the city of Rock Springs where you have the interstate going through and you've got the residential townhome development on the west side of, I think it's the College Drive exit. I think it's not going to be a place where I think everybody's going to want to live, but I think there can be mitigations taken into consideration, whether it's screening that can help provide a sound barrier as well. It's definitely something that can be looked into. I'll be honest, it hasn't been much of a discussion at this current point in time.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Slaughter?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. In looking at that area, it wouldn't be something that I would consider would be your logical choice for a residential subdivision. But in agreement with Megan on her comments, I don't know that that's my position to look at that. If the developer was willing to do that, I think it's within his purview to do so. I think it's nice to see some development potentially coming in with all that we have heard and the needs for housing that we're going to be seeing over the next little while. It's nice to see that. So with that said, I think I would accept the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation at this point in time.
Any other comments? If not, we do need to open this up for a public hearing. So at this time, if there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this zoning map amendment, now would be the appropriate time. Sure, come on up. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Rick Marshall. I own Marshall's Truck Repair right across the street from where this development is going to be. I have a few concerns. I'd like to know what kind of development they're planning. Is this going to be low income, high income? Because my concerns is the Sweetwater County Jail already releases prisoners to walk down 191 every day. Those people over there in that housing development are going to have a higher crime rate because of this. We have a higher crime rate because of this. If those are low income, what happens to the crime around my business? We have never had problems till the jail started letting people go. And now we have to watch it a lot closer. But if that becomes a low income housing development over there, and I hate to say this and be rude, but crime rate's going to go up. The other concern I have is if you zone that residential across the street from me, my high industrial or heavy industrial property value just went down. I can't afford to lose that value. The other, I have a few other concerns in the future. Are they going to want me to build a wall in front of my place so they can't see me? They don't want to, you see this down in bigger cities and stuff where eventually the residents don't want to see the commercial. And then it costs the commercial money to stop them from seeing me. County building codes. The county building code is not enforced. Is it enforced in a subdivision? Because it's not enforced in residential.
Are you talking about building code regulations, like how a house would be constructed?
How a house will be constructed, what the county says is a building code. When your inspector comes out, he doesn't enforce any of it though.
The only thing that the Sweetwater County Planning and Zoning Department can enforce regulation wide is fire code. We do not participate in building code right now.
But you have building codes.
We don't have building codes that we can enforce. It's just fire
You
code.
can enforce.
Mhm.
So they can build anything they want over there in any way. Is another concern of mine. Once they start building, these houses can will not meet code or cannot, they can and can't depending on the developer. But I mean, the county does not tell them, hey, you can let gasoline run from your garage into your house, things like that. And that becomes what I would call a public problem, because in my experience, it takes 25 minutes for the fire department to get to my location. And 25 minutes on a subdivision on fire, how's that gonna help everybody? Those are my concerns on it. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time.
No, not at all. Appreciate that, Mr. Marshall. You raised some good points with that, and I guess, how does that work, Megan, as far as, I know, within the zoning requirements, they have some of that, but in reference to his question and, building code, if it is in the county, what do they follow? If we're not enforcing that, do they follow standards? I mean, it's not annexed in the city. Can you clarify that?
So the codes that we can enforce is going to be surrounded by fire. So firewalls, fire barriers. And this is something, it's not 100% my purview, but I know there's different regulations on, for example, like your garage, it's got to be sloped to the front of the house, different things like that to help prevent fire problems. What we can't tell somebody, because we don't participate in the building code, is you need to make sure that you have rebar in your foundation. Or if someone wants to go out and build a house with just put stick straight onto the ground, they can do that. Or if they want to do it on some sort of concrete pillars, they can do that. Because we don't participate in building code, we can't tell them how to construct their house. Within our zoning regulations, we do have requirements of what types of buildings can be there. For example, in this R3 proposed zone, you would be able to have a manufactured home. I don't believe, you'd be able to have a modular home, but not a manufactured home. You'd be able to have a stick-built house. So there's a little bit of control with what types of buildings or residential structures can go there, but how those structures, if they're chosen to be stick-built, we can't tell someone how they go about doing that. Now, when it comes to the R3, we've talked about in the past and just went through a previous language amendment back. I believe it just got approved in February for townhome development, to where the setback on a townhome is taken from, instead of it being 15 feet, if they share a common wall, because that's something we have within our fire code regulations, we can go out and inspect that to make sure that that firewall that's shared between the two structures goes all the way from the foundation all the way up through the roof, so that they are built in a way that they're considered by two structures by fire code. So we have some of that stuff in place because we have fire code, but I'm not just going to disagree that there could be problems because we don't have building code, but that's a county-wide thing that's been that way as long as I've been here. And I know there's been topics of conversation to add building code into our regulations that have not been well received in the past.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Marshall, commissioners, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Still under the public comment portion. No need to apologize.
My name is Lee Splatt. I'm a county resident and I live in the Clearview Acres subdivision. One of the things that concerns me, we had a proposed subdivision, 165 homes developed or proposed for the Clearview improvement area, but we couldn't provide the water, so that fell through. The developer couldn't afford to bring the additional water in, and we couldn't get the water through the city system where we currently get the water. My concern is, and I have some experience with this, as we develop our county and we get more and more scattered. It costs more and more to provide the infrastructure, the services, the roads, the fire, water. And as we go through with this isn't just a burden on the developer. If we have a water line that goes out 5 miles or whatever, and we have to lay that water line, that's going to be an added cost to the Joint Powers Water Board, which is going to wind up costing everybody in the county that uses that system additional money. So my only thought is to be cautious on how we expand and look at the cost of the infrastructure that it's going to cost to supply that. And then I know the sheriff's office is right there, but my wife worked at Cruel Jacks and one time for several years. And as we had people come from the jail out there walking into town, they had more crime from that aspect of it. I would not consider the low income. I'm definitely low income. I barely make it, but by the same token, that doesn't mean I'm going to go rob somebody's pocket. But we have existing criminals already being turned loose that are walking down that road. They don't always get a ride to town, and as a result, they do pose somewhat of a safety problem for the residents of the county, and definitely for people who use that highway. I was coming in a few years ago from the south. It was night, and we had a person out there trying to stop traffic because it was cold and he was cold. And I got to town and called the sheriff's department, and I don't know if they ever responded or not, but it was a cold day and he was not dressed to be walking down that highway, but he was. So these are things that appreciate it if you would add to your concerns. And I'm not going to speak for or against this. I'm just looking at the infrastructure and other aspects of these outlying developments.
Thanks, Mr. Split. Appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Thanks very much. Does the applicant want to speak to any of these? Come on up, please. Morning.
Morning. Thank you. Couple of the points, the building code point, the county really doesn't have a building code, but it doesn't matter where you're building, industrial, residential, anything like that. All up Yellowstone Road, all that. There's currently some building going on in the Area 33 Estates subdivision. It doesn't have a building code. And I will say, like you said something that I think needs to be stressed is we think there's a lot coming. And we need to be able to deal with that. I can tell you with some certainty, it is very, very difficult to get a development going. This is going to be my third attempt at going through the process. We were in the city on 2 that are much closer, the whole works, couldn't get them done. What this area has is the water, the sewer, the power, and the gas are close enough that you can make it work. Because that is something that you have zoning regulations, you have building codes, you have all those things. But the other one is, where are the services? And can you actually do it? And in this one, you can. And I can promise you that I'm not the only one that has scoured every square foot of this area, Green River, Rock Springs, all the way through to try to get a development through. And it is hard. It is hard because you've got, and they have legitimate concerns, neighbors, things like this. This particular one, another thing to consider, yes, the north and south is zoned I-2, north and south of this, but it's also owned by the BLM. So what's going to happen to that land relative to future development is a little bit of a different consideration when you're talking about neighboring being a different zone. Whereas if it was, say, owned by a private citizen, that is going to have a little bit of a different impact. Normally, I wouldn't bring up the fact who the neighbor is, but in this case, because it is the BLM, it is a little bit different. One, because their use isn't going to probably bring development. And if they wanted to, they're going to do whatever they want. They're not, right? Kind of thing. So the neighboring zoning, in the one case, I would bring up that the fact that the neighbor is on north and south is the BLM. For the guys on the west of us, absolutely, if you're an I2 next to a residential, it's a concern. But in this case, you do have 191 that creates a buffer and it creates a separation, which I do think that helps. Additionally, the speed limit, by the way, goes to 70 just south of this development. And long-term, right, that road actually is closed most of the winter. Most of your heavy truck traffic is just going to the dump. It's actually not that heavily traveled of a road for it being a US highway. Relative, and again, the speed limits don't really kick up until you get past. So at the end of the day, it's hard. And this piece works. And now to his question about infrastructure, there isn't building code, but when it comes to the development, there is a process to make sure things are done right. Joint Powers Water Board is going to make sure that the water is run correctly. I actually even have a bone to pick with the Joint Powers Water Board when it comes to the water, but we'll come to that. We'll get to that later. Sewer in the county is unique, and the county does not have, or I wouldn't say it's unique, but the county doesn't have water facilities and sewer facilities. So to try to do a higher density in the county, the county, I think, does need to be careful because you don't want to get into the sewer business. I don't think you would want to. But West Side is there, and West Side is, and preliminary review says that they can handle it. They have the facilities to take this on. So we have the opportunity to have a higher density residential development in the county simply because the facilities are there and the facilities can handle it. And that in town, it's hard to do. And that's Green River, that's Rock Springs, that's anywhere. It's hard, and you can do it here. That's, I think, my summation on that. Any questions?
Well, I appreciate that. Any comments or questions for the applicant?
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm Brian Marincic with 191 LLC.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you coming up and certainly for your vision to want to help with the upcoming, demand of housing and all that. These are difficult, but I'm sure it's more difficult from your shoes trying to, move forward with some form of development and all the struggles that come along with that. So, aside
they
from
all
some of the
have
concerns,
challenges,
I
right?
appreciate that vision.
Every development has challenges, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's neighbors, whether it's access. And this piece of property is developable. And all the pieces are close enough that it can work.
Okay. Thank you for that background. We're still under the public comment portion. If there's anyone else in the audience or online that would like to speak to this zoning map amendment, now would be the appropriate time. Last call. If not, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any further discussion on this resolution?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Richards.
Mr. Chairman, I believe in a free market with consideration given to public safety. And I appreciate both Rick and Lee's concerns. Yes, Sweetwater County doesn't have building codes. And that's a conscious decision made years ago and supported year after year as building codes haven't been adopted. But I don't think that's a negative. It'll be up to the developer and the builders to develop projects and properties that appeal to buyers. And we use both fire code and zoning regulations to provide some additional checks and balances. And as Mr. Renzick said, the utilities themselves have their own standards. It's interesting. One of the largest roadblocks to development is NIMBY, not in my backyard. And it's interesting to see it going backwards in an industrial developer saying, I don't think I want residential in my backyard. It's usually the other way. It's usually the house is going, oh no, I bought next to this big field. I don't want anything ever going there. So as we look at the need for at least 1,000 houses coming in our community, I don't want to be the one that allows NIMBY to stand up and be that roadblock, as much as I appreciate Rick's concerns about it. I think this is a good development. If it was a couple of acres surrounded by industrial property, I think I might feel differently, but this is 80 acres across a highway. I think there's plenty of opportunity for the developers to build in some buffer zones, to develop strategically and provide properties that consumers are going to want to purchase. Because that's, in the end, if they don't do that, it'll sit empty, which is kind of why we have the three-year time limit built into the development process. I can only think that 80 acres of nice residential development will be a positive to our community. So with that, I'm going to move for approval of Resolution 24-06-ZO-02 for the approval of zoning map amendment from heavy industrial I2 to high density residential as presented.
Do you have a motion to approve the resolution as presented by Commissioner Richards? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Further discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Next, under tab B is item number 3. We've got the approval of resolution 2406-ZO-03, a variance for maximum height from section 5G of the 2015 zoning resolutions requested by Carla Sussner with SAC Wireless on behalf of Union Wireless. Sure I got that wrong, so I apologize for that, but at this time we'll hand it back to Cassidy.
Thank you. So this piece of property that we're looking at here for the variance is located at 64 Gannett Drive in Rock Springs, and the current zoning on that area is commercial. It's within the growth management area. And we do actually have applicants here today as well, so they can speak a little bit more on some of the things that I'm going to cover with this. But we can see with our zoning map that we do have a fairly good sized commercially zoned district. And then right very close in the surrounding areas is also a residential area. And then we have our site location here is our aerial view of the site. And for some background information on this site, Union Wireless had previously proposed a height variance for a 120-foot permanent cell tower on the same property. However, it was recommended to be denied. The variance was by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so the application was withdrawn, and Union Wireless actually requested a meeting with staff where they presented additional information to us and it was a little bit more meaningful the way that they had presented it this time. And they put forth that they would like to actually go for an 80-foot tower instead of the 120-foot tower. So the reason we're here today is to actually look at them putting on an 80-foot cell tower on this property. Currently at this location, there's a 50-foot cow that's there, and that's the current max height for that zone. So this new cell tower would be 80 feet, and it would be, the cell tower with ancillary facilities. And then one thing to keep in mind here is that Union would need to move the existing cow that's on the property to the east while they construct the permanent tower. And then once that tower is built, then they can remove the cow, the communications on wheel, just a temporary tower, basically. They can move that off of the location, so then it would only be the 80-foot cell tower that is there, wouldn't be the two. So we do have some site photos. You can see our view from north, south, west, east, and then our public posting here. And moving into our review criteria for variance. So the first is just that that there are special conditions or circumstances that are peculiar to the land or the building that support a variance. So here, when we first heard of this and it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you were very concerned about the visual impact of a tall cell tower in this location, just because there are residential areas around. And so, a big consideration was, what is that impact on the view shed? We found that the applicant provided evidence that the topography of the area and the property itself actually really supports a variance, especially for this 80-foot cell tower, because the elevation varies so greatly out north of town in Rock Springs that it really helps to lessen that visual impact that the cell tower would have. And they did provide some visual simulations that we'll look at in a little bit too, so you can kind of see for yourselves what that would potentially look like. The second criteria that we looked at is that if, for reasons fully set forth in the commission's and board's findings, the circumstances or conditions are such that strict application of the provisions of the Sweetwater County zoning resolution would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land or building, the granting of the adjustment is necessary or reasonable use thereof, and the adjustment as granted is the minimum adjustment that will accomplish this purpose. The applicant provided evidence in their application that Union Wireless does have storage buildings on the property, in addition to their existing cow that's on there and the proposed tower. So reasonable use of allowable uses on the said property would not be restricted if the variance is not granted. However, they also provided evidence to us that alternative locations within their coverage area here would be insufficient, and that the proposed tower height of 80 feet is the minimum height required to provide adequate service to the area. The new tower will also be able to accommodate future co-locations, so that can limit, the need for more cell towers. And then our final criteria that we look at is just if it is in harmony with the general purposes of the zoning resolution and won't be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. So the cell tower will provide additional cell phone coverage for 5G, and we find that the impact on residential view sheds is minimized by, the varying elevation. And then as far as safety concerns go, the proposed 80-foot tower, the center line will have a fall zone radius of 40 feet. And that's per an engineer letter that was submitted with the evidence from the applicant. So it should not fall in a way that'll be dangerous for the public. It won't impede the north or east property boundaries or the north or east aerial power lines. And then there's only one property that could potentially be within that fall zone, and that's the property to the west. But that is actually also owned by Union Wireless's landlord, and they've submitted a letter of authorization to go ahead and continue with this project. So they've acknowledged the any risk that there might be and are okay with it. So that's Brian Smith. He also is the owner of that property to the west. And the tower will not fall within the right-of-way. We had 2 agency comments, and Lumen and Marathon both said no conflict here with this. At the June 12th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the P&Z Commission voted 3-0 to recommend the recommendation for the variance for maximum height. And then, with 3 staff recommended conditions. So those 3 were, first, that the conditional use permit resolution is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So that will be next. And then the second is that the variance is specific to the proposed cell tower. It doesn't apply to any other structure. Third, that if the height of the tower ever needs to increase above that proposed 80 feet, the applicant will need to go through the variance and conditional use processes again. And then we also, in addition to having applicant here in person today, we do have Cynthia Vandermark with SAC Wireless online as well. Then that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassidy. Appreciate that. Questions for staff on this variance, commissioners? Questions or comments for the applicant? If not, we do need to open this up for a public hearing. So at this time, if there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this variance request, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06-ZO-03 with the approval of a variance for maximum height from section 5.G of the 2015 zoning resolution.
Got a motion to approve resolution 2406-Z003 by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Moving right along under tab B is item number 4. Approval resolution 2406-Z004, conditional use permit for an 80-foot cell tower as requested by the same applicant. At this time, we'll hand it back to Cassidy.
Thank you very much. So, yes, same property, same applicant here. So we're going to kind of go through a lot of this information because, a lot of this is repeated from the previous hearing. We have, same site and everything like that, same application summary. So, and then same views. So going into our conditional use review criteria, we do have 9 items to consider here. So first is that the request is consistent with all applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan. And we find that it is, the cell tower will provide additional cell phone coverage for 5G and that it also, that view shed should be minimized by the elevation in the area. Second, the request shall not adversely affect adjacent properties. And the applicant has shown to us that because of the way that the cell tower will be constructed and the fall zone, that it won't impede the north or east property lines, that it won't mess with the north or east aerial power lines. And again, the property that's to the west is the only one that's really potentially at risk for any damage if the tower happens to fall, but it's again owned by their landlord and they have a good relationship with him and he has said, go for it. I'm good with this. So they've provided all of that to show that this request should not affect any properties adversely, and then also that the tower won't fall within that right of way. The third is that the request is compatible with the existing or allowable uses of adjacent properties, and this proposed location for the cell tower is within a commercially zoned district, so that we find that that's a compatible use because of the districts that it's in, and then both of the residential and commercially zoned properties that are adjacent here will benefit from the improved 5G cellular coverage. 4 and 5, the request can demonstrate adequate facilities and adequate provisions for maintenance for use. I mean, they've been demonstrated for this request, and Union Wireless has been leasing this site since March of 2014. So they've not had issues with that. Our 6th criteria is the request has minimized to the greatest degree possible adverse effects on the natural environment. Staff does not predict any adverse effects to the natural environment. And we also, going on to number 7, don't foresee this causing any undue traffic congestion. This is an unmanned site that's being proposed. And so there should be no traffic issues there. 8 is kind of just a reiteration of the, items we've already discussed here. The request will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. And we find that the applicant has put forth enough information that it will not. And then finally here, the request conforms to all applicable provisions of the resolution. The request does exceed the height limitations of 5G of the Sweetwater County zoning resolution. So we did need that variance request to be approved, which it was. So now it would meet it. Our public comments here, our agency comments, Lumen and Marathon, both no conflict again. And at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on June 12th, the P&Z Commission voted to recommend our recommendation for the conditional use permit for an 80-foot cell tower with the 3 staff recommended conditions. So this time, the 3 recommended conditions were that the 80-foot height variance resolution is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. The variance is specific to this proposed cell tower, does not apply to any other structure. And if the height of the tower is to increase above the proposed 80 feet, applicant will need to go through the variance and CUP processes again.
Thanks, Cassidy. Appreciate it. Questions or comments for staff on this conditional use permit, commissioners? Questions for the applicant? I have a comment, and Eric's gonna laugh because I bring it up every time, but we've dealt with towers throughout the community, and I just wish there was more effort on the applicant's part to try and disguise these. And I appreciate the photos in this particular packet, gives a lot of different, viewpoints from within that area. And I realize there's not a lot of trees in that area, but I can't help but look at, White Mountain in the background when you're coming out of Clubhouse Drive there. And in the past, I've asked for some kind of camouflage to make it blend in more with the area. I realize some of these are a little more industrial in nature, but I just wish that, those companies that are investing in these would take that into consideration for, some form of, I guess, a better view shed within the area. I know other communities have done it, and, perhaps they're not as comparable to ours, like in Sublette and Teton County, for instance, but the more of these that go up, I think is good for improving the services throughout the community. But I think a better effort could be made to, help blend them in with the landscape so that they're not something that sticks out so obviously. So I've been a little bit critical on that in the past. I haven't supported it in the past because I've yet to see any efforts in that regard. So that would be my comments on that. If
You
there's
mean
not
like a giant cactus or something?
a pine tree. If there's no other comments, we do need to open this up for public hearing. So if there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this conditional use permit application, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion. And commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06-ZO-04 for the approval of a conditional use permit for an 80-foot cell tower.
Do you have a motion to approve resolution 2406-Z004 by Commissioner Richards? Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
Got a second by Commissioner Toman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I am a nay. Motion does pass 4-1. Moving right, Commissioner Richards.
I will definitely take your concerns to the P&Z Commission for future developments. I think that's language we can, especially when we're so close to residential areas, I think that's language we can consider.
Appreciate that. This does bring us to our 5th and final item under the tab B. And we have the approval of resolution 2406-Z005, a zoning map amendment established zoning to be mixed residential R2 as requested by the Sweetwater County land use staff. And we will hand it back one last time to Cassidy.
All right. Thank you, Chairman West. So this one is put forth by Sweetwater County Land Use Department. It's for a few parcels of land. It's land vacated in a vacated alleyway within Jamestown Block 18, adjacent to lots 6 to 7 and lots 8 through 11. Vacated portion of Fourth Street and portion of vacated alley being south of Jamestown Block 4, Sweetwater County, Wyoming. And the property owners here, there are a few. So Deborah Buckner, John and Stephanie Jasperson, Kale and Yvonne Jasperson, Revocable Trust, Jasperson, Kale, and Yvonne trustees. So currently, there's these 4 parcels of land that were recently created through the vacation process, and they are not zoned, and we would like to have them be zoned as mixed residential to just, sorry, the zoning map amendment is for approximately 0.31 acres, and the surrounding properties are also zoned R2. So the minimum district size that's required for an R2 zoning district is 5 acres, and that's not going to be a problem here. This amendment to the zoning map would help the department to document how zoning was assigned and just kind of clean things up. So we can see the 4 parcels here that we're looking to have zoned as R2. And then we've got 2 sets of site photos with our public notice. So from the north, south, east, and west here. So this is 4th and Block 4, and then again, Block 6 through 7 and 8 through 11. And for our review criteria, there are 6 of them. The first is that the amendment is consistent and compatible with the current resolution and comprehensive plan. We're really looking to help development continue in an orderly manner. And so this amendment would allow the department to maintain the R2 zoning of the existing neighborhood and have clear zoning maps and regulations. The proposed zoning is suitable for the existing topography and creates buildable lots, and we find that it does, it's suitable. Our third criteria is that the proposed zoning is compatible with existing or allowable uses of adjacent properties and neighboring zoning districts. And again, the parcels are surrounded by R2 zone parcels and are compatible with existing or allowable uses. The fourth one is that the proposed zoning can demonstrate adequate public facilities, including road, drainage, all of those different things that will be needed there. And there are already public facilities that are adequate that are located within the area. The amendment shall not adversely affect adjacent properties, communities, or health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Sweetwater County. This amendment would not adversely affect any of those adjacent properties. We've also not received any negative comments on this proposal. And then finally, the request conforms to all applicable provisions of this resolution as it does meet the required district size. Our agency comments again, we've got Lumen and Marathon, and again, they said no conflict. And at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the P&Z did vote to recommend this zone map amendment for establishing the zoning to be mixed residential. And that's all I've got for this one.
Thanks, Cassidy. Appreciate
you.
that. Questions or comments for staff on this zoning map amendment, commissioners?
Yes, I have one.
Commissioner Tobin.
Okay, who owns the property now?
So currently there are several different owners. So it's Deborah Buckner, John and Stephanie Jasperson, Kale and Yvonne Jasperson, Revocable Trust, Jasperson, Kale and Yvonne trustees. So
If it's an alley, it doesn't have ownership. So you're proposing, like we did before, to give each of those adjacent property owners a share of that property?
So I'm thinking Megan or Eric
Sorry.
can speak. No, that's absolutely fine, but they'll just be able to speak
I was
to this
just curious as to
with a
how
little more experience.
the ownership is going to be.
Just for clarification on this, so both of these areas have gone through the vacation process at the end of last year with Andy and Jean. So they've already been vacated. So they went from being alleyways and right-of-ways to now parcels of land.
Right.
Because they were alleyways and right-of-ways, they didn't have any zoning associated with that. And staff can't just go in and say, I want it to be this without having some sort of record of how it got to be that way. So these parcels of land are now owned by citizens.
By the adjacent property owners of, through the alley then.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
And that's stuff that has been taken care of in the past. What we're doing today is just documenting what we're assigning the zoning to be. In hopes that, and I've actually talked with both of the property owners in the past. They're wanting to go through a replat process, which I think would be a great idea because it would help clean up interior lot lines to where they could use their property a little bit more feasibly, to where they're bigger properties instead of the 50 by 100-foot properties that were built for mobile homes back in the early 1900s when Jamestown subdivision originally got platted.
So they could build homes on them. And how was the deed transferred to those owners then?
It got transferred with the vacation process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions, comments? Thanks, Megan. If not, we do need to open this up for public hearing on resolution 2406Z05, a zoning map amendment. If there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this amendment, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve resolution 24-06-ZO-05 for approval of a zoning map amendment establishing zoning to be mixed residential R2.
You have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Megan and Cassidy and staff for getting us through.
Thank you.
Good work.
Mr. Chairman, one day you may see your pine tree, okay?
I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna get one.
I want a cactus. Or maybe a sagebrush.
This does conclude tab B portion of the agenda, Commissioners. Next, this is going to bring us right along into the county resident comments and concerns portion of the agenda. If there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to address the governing body on any issues, now would be the appropriate time. Welcome back, Mr. Splat.
Thank you. As I said before, I'm a resident of Clearview Acres subdivision, also a resident of the Clearview Improvement and Service District. My first question to the commission, when the Improvement and Service District revised their method of billing a year ago, did they get permission from and approval from the county commission when they did this?
I don't recall anything in regards to that. You said they changed their method of billing. Is that what you said?
Method of billing and the cost of the services being charged, yes.
Do you have any recollection, Commissioner Richards?
Wouldn't that go through the treasurer's office?
Pardon?
Would that go through the treasurer's
That comes
office?
through the county attorney, or I'm sorry. The county commission.
Our
Chairman,
lawyer is searching it out.
my understanding is the only thing we would have approval on is the mill levy request, authorizing the mill levy request. Mr. De Leon, am I wrong in that?
You are correct.
Yeah, Mr. Splat, I don't believe we have any role in governing how special improvement districts bill their members. That's why they have their own elected board. Our role is limited to the application for the mill levy request and our approval of that to make sure it's done correctly, not that it's.
The statute that governs an improvement district requires that when an improvement district sets up its billing procedures, that it come before the county commission and the county commission approve that. That doesn't mean that they're getting into a water and sewer district or anything. All that is for the protection of the residents of the area. And so we're looking into that right now, and unfortunately, individuals have a very difficult time funding an appropriation for opposing this, but the statute does require that the county commission approve that billing process. And so my curiosity is, did they come before the county commission? We fought with this over years and years. The county commission saying they didn't want to get involved in water and sewer, et cetera, but the statute doesn't, in this case, it's an improvement district and it doesn't deal with water and sewer. The district was formed to provide for water and sewer and streets and roads in the construction of the streets and roads, and then operate the improvement with the water and sewer as an improvement. And it specifies at how that improvement is to be maintained, financially maintained, and how we are billed for water, and where that, how that's set up. So I didn't want to go out on left field, knowing that as far as my 50 years of living out there and my 30 years of serving as an operator or a board member, knowing that the original billing process had been approved by the county commission many years ago. But this was suddenly changed. It's my contention that the billing process does not meet the standards as required by the statute, and is placing an extreme burden on elderly, anybody trying to have a lawn, or families with large families, or have a illness in the family or something like that. So that's and if they do come before you with such a proposal, I would request that this be set up with a public hearing, and in that the residents would then, because a year ago when they set these, we did oppose the rate structure, but they went ahead and put it through anyway. And it's my contention, and I'm not sure what an attorney would say, but it's my contention that if they did not get permission from the county to change the billing process, then we would have standing to require the district to repay that money that was collected back to the residents. In doing this, they relieved some of the businesses of their due financial obligation, but if in the sum of over $20,000, but for the residents that own our lots out there, we are paying a total of over $80,000 a year in excessive fees, and part of that is being used to subsidize these businesses, which I think would be somewhat improper. So that is my question as to how we would, the county would want to proceed. But as I say, the county commission is required by statute to approve that billing process.
Okay, that's something we can look into. Obviously, we're not familiar with it. There's several other districts out there that have never come before us since I've been on here, other than a mill levy, allocation. So we can look into it for you, but right now we're not prepared to
Right.
full answer on.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up, get it on record publicly, that we do have a concern, and it's quite one of the things that we did back, just for information. The statute requires the county treasurer to do the billing, and in that instance, the district relieved the county treasurer of doing the actual billing process. back when the district was formed some 30 odd years ago, because it was a process that the county treasurer was not financially able to handle. But that did not, because we accepted the responsibility for doing the billing, that did not relieve the district or anyone else of the responsibility of following the statute and making sure that we were doing things the way that they should be, and not something that they do in secret or do what they want and create a slush fund that they can, as they said, spend as they wish. And that's where so I appreciate your time in this, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Splett. Appreciate the information.
You betcha.
Still under county resident comments and concerns. If there's anyone else in the audience or online that would like to address the governing body, now is the appropriate time. Hearing and seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the county resident comments and concerns portion of the agenda. It's some time to make up here, commissioners. That's going to move us right along into tab C, which is the consent agenda. Before you this morning are nine items under the consent agenda. The first being the approval of the June 4th, 2024 minutes, approval of the county vouchers, warrants, and EALs, the approval of bonds, approval of monthly reports, the approval of the abates and rebates, a request to restaff a vacant position in the Veterans Service Office, a request to ratify a CLG letter regarding the proposed land management plan direction and DEIS for old growth forest conditions across the National Forest System, a request to ratify the CLG comments on the Wyoming Public Service Commission's notice of Rocky Mountain Power's application to increase rates, and a request to ratify CLG comments on the Greater Sage Grouse Draft RMP amendment. Commissioners, are there any wishes to pull any items off the consent agenda before us this morning? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Slaughter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. It's going to bring us right along into the commissioner comments portion of the agenda. Looks like I'm up first today, so lunch is on me.
Oh, yes.
I did attend Jim Zimmerman's retirement party the day after our last meeting. Special congratulations to Jim and his family as they begin the next chapter in life. I also met his replacement, and Alan Adams, and extend a warm welcome aboard as he dives into his new role. Shortly after our last meeting, I received a letter from Southwest Counseling's new board chair, Kayleen Logan, after listening in on our discussions relative to the 23-hour stabilization bed program that we touched on last time we were here. She wanted me to share a response in regards to that, and states that she believes and supports the involvement of Southwest Counseling Service, especially the board of directors, to be involved in meetings with the hospital and other stakeholders in the county regarding finding solutions to the acute, subacute, and crisis services offered to individuals and stakeholders in needs. She personally would appreciate the consideration in being involved. She's unable to attend their next meeting next week, but she has sent an email informing the rest of the board on her thoughts and hopes for some discussion at that meeting to figure out how they can be better involved in trying to make the stabilization program a reality. So I appreciate that letter, and we'll continue to work on that to see if we can make it happen. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've fielded quite a few complaints in regards to the shooting range out on Little Fire Hole. So I took a trip out there last Monday and walked through the different lanes, got with our public works director to start addressing some of those needs. It was just some maintenance and some of honestly, it was a lot of vandalism that's taken place. I just think, with limited staff, sometimes it's difficult to monitor some of the different conditions out there, but we're going to make it a priority to have more weekly checks on those. And with the help of Parks and Road and Bridge, they jumped right in last week and started making improvements and cleaning up some of the areas in need and getting more targets out there for the public to enjoy. So You all received a complaint email as well. I forwarded the response after some of those improvements took place. So sounds like they're getting things turned around out there, and I appreciate Gene for jumping on that. And hopefully the public will see that we try and cover everything we can, but sometimes it's easier than not. And it's a big county, so I appreciate the eyes and ears of the community trying to keep us aboard and make sure we're handling business up here and taking care of some of the amenities that we have. So appreciate staff helping out on that. I did attend a Southwest Counseling Finance Committee meeting last Thursday where they discussed how and if they should move forward with a recommendation to the board on continuing with some of the capital improvement projects. As you know, obviously we cut those during discussions at our last workshop, so they are trying to plan accordingly to probably cut those requests in half and see if they can self-fund them. So we'll see where that goes at their monthly meeting next week. I did have a lengthy discussion with Christina on grant funding and the impact assistance monies that are available, and appreciate her time in helping educate me throughout this ongoing budget rodeo process, I would call it. Lots of moving parts as we continue to learn pretty much on a daily, if not weekly basis. And it sounds like she'll be here this afternoon in the workshop to help provide some clarity. So I appreciate her time. With that, spent quite a bit of time on the phone yesterday with Commissioner Slaughter as well, after we discovered a new shortfall, which would be an additional $3.5 million unless we agree to utilize reserves to help balance the ongoing deficit. That kind of came by surprise with the last binder that was sent out. I believe it was last Friday. But somewhere in the mix of the hospital lab funding and a handful of budget amendments, the current draft budget we all received indicates a reduction in reserves of about $3 million plus the original $319,000 shortfall that we had kind of left off with at the last workshop grew by about $115,000, bringing that shortfall to $434,000. So overall, we're back to another $3.5 million to sort through this afternoon, and that should be an interesting conversation. I did work on it quite a bit yesterday. I have a spreadsheet that I'm happy to share with you all that at least can begin a conversation starter on how we can get there. But you know, it's been a difficult process this year, and I think, you know, with the valuation being down, that certainly has a big portion of that, and then just a little bit of confusion on where we're pulling, you know, the hospital lab funding and some of the different overages on top of carryover, and it's been intense to say the least. So I look forward to hopefully getting some clarity on that and finalizing a plan forward. Treasurer Cowan approached me about a week ago to see if we'd be interested in having another employee appreciation barbecue this year. I assumed you all would be on board with that. So the tentative plan is for August 20th. That'll be at noon here at the courthouse, which does fall on a county commissioner meeting day again. We thought that worked out pretty well, as long as it's my turn to buy lunch that day. And Treasurer Cowan's going to reach out to Commerce Bank and Western Wyoming Beverages again to see if they'd be willing to help us. So if you're all good with that, we'll continue to plan accordingly, but I appreciate his efforts in trying to line that up. Next week, I've got Board of Health and Southwest Counseling's monthly meetings on the 26th, and I look forward to those, as well as finalizing and officially adopting the fiscal year 25 budget on the evening of the 27th. Quite the process this year. I plead for an improved process next year, as the last two have been heavily reliable on the research and dedication of this governing body, and it's time we get more involvement and improvement moving forward, because I think it's allowed for a lot of uncertainty and questions from whether it's staff or component units or outside agencies. And you know, collectively, I think all of us have had to take a pretty significant role in that process. So I aim to get that improved, and I hope that's the case. With that, I believe that's all I have for you this morning, and I'd stand for any questions. Not, Commissioner Slaughter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 4th, I attended, after our commission workshop, the Golden Hour Senior Center regular board meeting. Discussion there centered around routine items that take place in the center. Board Treasurer John Freeman was not in attendance, so their treasurer's report was tabled till the next meeting. I did, however, discuss the preliminary award they would receive from the county for fiscal year 25. They received the information well. They are also in contact with Gene Legursky on patching that is to be done in their parking lot. On the 5th, Commissioner Richards and I met with a working group of 4 McKinnon area residents and Public Works Director Legursky. Gene had identified several road surfaces that he felt might be acceptable for future work on County Road 1. We traveled to several areas and evaluated the surfaces as respective replacements for County Road 1. The only surface that residents felt would be acceptable was a double chip seal. We then met at the courthouse to discuss our findings and to make plans for moving forward. We are going to continue to look for additional funding, and we'll meet again July 10th to continue further planning. That afternoon, I attended the retirement party for Jim Zimmerman. Jim will certainly be missed. I did have the opportunity to meet Jim's replacement, Alan Adams, our new code enforcement specialist. Alan seemed like a good fit and is eager to begin his career with Sweetwater County. I definitely want to wish Jim and his family well and the best in their future endeavors. On the 10th, I conducted the regular monthly meeting of the Specific Purpose Tax Joint Powers Board. Our first debt service payment was paid this week. Projects are beginning to get underway and we approved several requisitions. Sales tax payments have leveled off the last 4 months, but we are still ahead of schedule on the collections. To date, we have collected $20,788,988. At current collection rates, it will take 48 months to fully collect, and we've already received 12 full months of collections. My last week, as described by the chairman, has been kind of spent the same as his has been, working on the budget, talking to several of our department heads, staff members, and elected officials in preparation for this afternoon's budget workshop. Mr. Chairman, that's all that I have. I would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any comments or questions for Commissioner Slaughter's report?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
Commissioner Slaughter, on the 6 cent issue, where is Jamestown Rio Vista on their project that was funded by 6 cent? Do you have any idea on
That's
that?
an excellent question, Commissioner Richards. Yes, I do. I spoke with Cale Jasperson of the Jamestown District one day last week, actually prior to that meeting. I let him know that we were having the meeting and suggested that in the near future, it would be nice to have a representative of their board come to the meetings, as we've not had a representative. I did specifically ask him where Jamestown was with respect to their projects. $9 million was awarded for those projects, and I felt like it was important that we had information for the specific tax board, the Joint Powers Board, on where Jamestown was with respect to this. He said that they are currently working with their engineering firm to do the preliminary plans. He expects that they will be done in the next 6 months. And once those plans are done, he believes that they will be able to start working on that project. I questioned him with respect to how they intend to move forward with the information that their project is going to be significantly higher priced with things that have taken place, obviously with inflation, some of the supply chain issues that have taken place and things of that nature. He did say that they are looking at different plans with respect to that. They're looking at a major issue with the city of Green River on where they will actually link into the city's plan. And they're working on how they can do it in a more efficient manner. Currently, the city is looking at having them move the location to a different location and to bring it underneath the river. And if they are going to do that, he believes that about $1 million more will have to be expended from that funds balance for the project. So they would be looking at possibly just doing things on the north side of the interstate or limiting what they're doing. They are currently looking at additional funding through some of the grants that may be coming back. I did let him know that, it's my best information is that there will be significant money coming back to the state for water and sewer projects and that they need to be on top of that. I suggested that he talk with Christina with respect to that. I know that in the past there had been some conversations with respect to that. So there could be additional funding that could be available through some of that grant funding. He said he would look into that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Commissioner Slaughter's report? Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Tillman, the floor is yours.
I vote for cactuses on the towers. My report revolves around mostly all of federal issues, but before I get into that, I do want to extend my appreciation to Jim Zimmerman, and we're going to miss him and really appreciate working with him, and appreciate the fact that he took over the fire warden for the county. He took over that role in building relationships with the other fire entities in the county. Great job. And I want to welcome Alan Adams, our new code enforcement person. So great things to look forward to. On the 6th, I attended an 1.5-hour Zoom meeting on the Forest Service's old growth plan amendment, which is the more it goes, the more confusing it gets. You'll see our Coalition of Local Governments comments on the process. Forest Service has basically developed all the alternatives. They don't even have signed cooperator MOUs from any of the local governments. And this is a national effort. They're still discussing definitions. It's pre-decisional, but there's nothing to talk about. We have not seen the alternatives. And the plan will come out around June 20th. At that same time, then they have promised they were going to continue to meet with us every 2 weeks to discuss our concerns with the alternatives that have been thrown in our face. So basically, it's another federal process, which I expressed last time. It's very frustrating. They're going outside of the usual process as far as following the National Environmental Policy Act, the Council on Environmental Quality, that outlines how they're to work with cooperators. So it's very frustrating. So I listen, but I don't know how much involvement or how much emphasis we're going to have. On the 11th through 13th, I went to Lander, stayed at Shoshone Rose where we had our meetings, and I only gambled the $10 that they gave us, and I didn't win a thing. So just want to let you know that. The facilities were great for our meeting, and the BLM Resource Advisory Committee or Council, we had a pretty aggressive agenda, but just I'll hit the highlights. All of the district managers in the state of Wyoming for the Bureau of Land Management provided updates for their areas. And there are a lot of great things and great projects happening on the Bureau of Land Management. But to focus on our Rock Springs area, the High Desert District, Frank Keeler, the fire chief or person for the BLM, is now the acting High Desert District manager for 120 days, I believe. The Rock Springs RMP, this is also ties in with our federal partners meeting that we have the first Friday. Some of the same items were discussed. The cooperating agencies will see a draft of that Rock Springs Resource Management Plan before the final EIS goes out in July and August. But they haven't given us a date, and they're still working to complete it. They assured us that the Governor Gordon's task force for Keaton and Taylor, Tracy Stone Manning did assure that those comments would be considered. So they're still saying they will be considered, but we don't know how and how they will address the ACECs. So they're really not telling us anything. Of the 35,000 comments, they had 400 categories of subjects to deal with. The next BLM topic, our Greater Sage Grouse Plan, we had comments due on the 13th of this month, and you saw those ratified through our coalition on our agenda today. They received 30,000 comments. This is a regional plan. I believe it includes 9 states. That final should be out by year end. They have a new project manager, Brenda Lincoln. Quincy Barr had been in that role for quite a long time. He has moved on. So they have promised that there will be state-specific decisions, but that plan also has gone through, I don't know, 3 or 4 iterations. State plans and then now this regional one. The Wyoming Landscape Conservation Initiative, of which I've been on that steering committee since its inception, either as a conservation district representative or an alternate right now to the county commissions. Their meeting, their annual, well, usually they have two meetings. Anyway, it will be July 9th. It will be held at Seaskinny National Wildlife Refuge, and they will try to do some tours from that location. They're still trying to resolve how they can accept outside grants because it cannot go through BLM. So they need a funding partner, a 503C type, but it has to be a government type of funding coordinator. They're hiring a coordinator for the BLM for that working group, that committee that does all of our work, and they will be housed through Cheyenne. The reports are on the WLCI .gov website. So there was a lot of discussion about the solar and the lands and the realty and just all of the issues that BLM deals with, but I just tried to highlight some of the ones that involve our county. Public lands conservation rule, there was quite a bit of discussion about that. They can be for restoration leases if they want to restore some land. It can be for conservation leases, or it can be for compensatory mitigation leases. Confusing, again, outside the process, the government just decided to make a rule, and now we have to live with it. It is outside of the Taylor Grazing Act, FLTMA, NEPA, Federal Land Policy Management Act, Natural Environmental Policy Act. So I don't know how they're going to work with that one. And we did a wild horse tour on the second day of the Lander herd. Again, severe overpopulation. Tracy Stone-Manning, the BLM director, has committed to reducing 20,000 wild horses during the next year. And I don't know where or how they're going to house all of those animals. So they're still trying to put a heavy emphasis on figuring out some kind of birth control. The Lander herd is sitting at 800 horses now, and it's supposed to be 50 or 60. A lot of horses, because of the bad winter 2 years ago, moved down into that area outside of Lander, between Lander and Riverton. So I'm also on a special working group with the BLM Resource Advisory Council. So we're trying to find solutions to be able to provide recommendations to the BLM. So we'll work on that, looking toward our next meeting. Okay, then that took 3 days. I went to Farson Senior Luncheon yesterday. They're doing great. They're having lunches Mondays and Thursdays. They did get some outside funding, and they're having 30 to 50 people show up every meal. So they have a great cook, and everyone wants to have dinner with that food. So that was fun. I met with a university graduate student yesterday, an interview for, not sure exactly what the title was, something about women in the West, I guess. So that will be exciting to hear what her study shows. Our federal partners meeting has been, we will skip it in July because of the 4th of July. We'll meet the first Friday in August. And tomorrow, airport meeting at 8 a.m. And at 10 a.m., the Coalition of Local Governments in Lyman. And next Tuesday, the Young at Heart Senior Center Liaison meeting. So those are my activities. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Busy couple weeks for you with lots of meetings and lots more on the horizon. Appreciate your work. Questions for Commissioner Tomann's report? If not, Commissioner Richards, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. After our last meeting, Commissioner Jones and I joined the bomb squad for a demonstration outside of Rock Springs. We got to see some of their people and their equipment in action. Taylor got to use some det cord and some IV bags to taco a door, and I got to blow up a string of a few pounds of explosives laid out on the ground. So I want to give my thanks to Sheriff Gross-Nickel, Representative Nemec, and the whole bomb squad for a fun and educational experiment. It's always a good day when you get to blow stuff up.
On,
Boy, I'm glad I wasn't there.
on the 5th, I joined members of the SEDC in a meeting with staffers from Senator Lummis's office, after which I joined Commissioner Slaughter and Public Works Director Legursky, along with some representatives from the McKinnon area to tour some different roads around the county to give us an idea of what some of our options are for CR1 going forward. It's a productive meeting. I think we learned a lot. We have a solid 2-year plan and we agreed we would work on developing a long-term plan for rehabilitating the road in the future. Later that day, I returned to the courthouse to join Jim Zimmerman for his retirement party. I too would like to extend my appreciation to Jim for the work he's done on behalf of the county, and congratulations to him and his family on moving forward with their lives. He'll definitely be missed, but I think Alan was a great choice to take over his role, and I look forward to working with him in the future. Due to some other commitments, I was unable to attend the enterprise meeting or the federal partners meeting, but I was able to attend the solid waste district meeting on the 10th. They're making some big equipment purchases in the near future and are doing their best to be good stewards of taxpayer money as they do it. On the 12th, I attended the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where they reviewed the applications that we addressed this morning. Later that day, I listened to the monthly WCCA conference call. On the 13th, I had planned to tune into the State Shooting Sports Complex meeting, but it turns out that it was an executive session only, so no information to share from that. Later that afternoon, I attended the SEDC Advisory Board meeting, and I do have a little bit of news to share from that group. First off, Casey Kukert has resigned from the SEDC board. So in addition to the appointments that we have to make today, we'll need to appoint someone to replace her in the near future. If you have any ideas for somebody you'd like to see on that board, please let me know. Second, Uintah County has agreed to partner with Sweetwater County to develop a comprehensive economic development study. The SEDS document is an important tool both counties can use to support our applications for grants of all kinds. And by partnering with Uintah County, we should be able to qualify for some EDA grants to fund the study itself. Are all of you okay with pursuing grant funding for that purpose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Finally, the SEDC has been weighing their role in helping to address the housing demands that our communities will be facing soon. They've discussed hiring a housing coordinator, but they aren't sure if that's the right role for their organization. It's an idea that would require buy-in from us as well as the 2 cities, but we would all have to see the benefit for that to go forward. Probably a lot more discussion on that going forward. In the meantime, they plan on continuing to focus on business retention and expansion in accordance with their strategic plan. Yesterday, I joined John King on the radio for my monthly visit there to talk about all things county. And last night, I attended the monthly meeting of the library board. They continue to be busy with their number of programs, program attendance, and patron visits continuing to increase. Physical collection circulation is down, but circulation of their digital collection continues to grow, with April seeing an all-time record of over 4,000 checkouts through Libby. The board authorized an application for WLMCF grant to offset some of the cost of the new boiler at the White Mountain Library, something we'll be discussing later today. Director Travis has been working with our grants manager, Christina, to identify opportunities that might be out there to lessen the impact of that project on our budget. So I commend them both for that. Going forward on the 20th, NACO is hosting a panel discussion on strategies for transparent and effective county budgeting. I think I'll tune into that, even though it's probably a little bit late to be of any help to us this budget cycle. On the 20th, I'll attend the Minerals Committee Working Group for Industrial Siting Impact Fees. On the 24th, I'll give checking into the Shooting Sports Complex Task Force meeting another try. We'll see what kind of information I can get from that. Also on the 24th, I'll join the Combined Communications Board for their monthly meeting. On the 25th, the Shooting Sports Task Force meets again, and I'll also join the Fair Board for their monthly meeting. I think that's all I have scheduled before we all come back here on the 2nd. Before I wrap up, I do want to mention that the Escapees RV rally is going on right now at the events complex. So if you see any of those folks around our community, please welcome them. And I want to remind everyone that Flaming Gorge Days will be going on here in Green River on June 28th and 29th. So I hope you all get out there and support that. I think that's all I have for you today, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate the report. Lots of meetings for you too. Questions or comments for Commissioner Richards' report? If not, Commissioner Jones, you're bringing up the rear here.
Well, that leaves me with a fair amount of me too. So that'll shorten my report some. Did want to mention the bomb squad. It was a great afternoon to go out and spend a little time up there. So it was fun to blow something up, but pretty interesting to see all their equipment and their capabilities. So appreciate that organization. I too would like to wish luck to Jim Zimmerman and welcome Alan to the board or to the group. I mean, on Thursday, the 6th, I attended the enterprise meeting where Marty Kroll with All West gave a great presentation on what they have going on. Very busy there. On Friday, the 7th, attended the Overland Stage Stampede Rodeo here in Green River. I'd like to thank the city of Green River and all involved for providing a professional event. On Monday, the 9th, attended the monthly Star Bus meeting. One of the main topics discussed there again is their desire to refresh their brand, have a new logo designed, and have new website built. On Wednesday, the 12th, I attended the Sweetwater Snowpokes meeting to discuss our annual state convention, which will be held in Sweetwater County this coming March. This will be our year to hold it. So we're making progress on hopefully having the biggest and the best convention ever. Have some great ideas going. Something else I'd like to mention in there, some people have heard about this, but last Saturday, at the International Snowmobile Congress, Pete Libby with Rocky Mountain Power Sports was awarded the Snowmobile Dealer of the Year award. That's for the whole United States. So it's a pretty prestigious award. It's obviously kind of surprising for a small state and a small dealer in comparison to the rest of the United States, but it's not based off of solely how many snow machines you sell. It's what do you do for your community? What do you do for the sport? How do you give back? Pete's got a lifetime of doing all of those things, so it's very well deserved. I wrote a letter, Senator Jones wrote a letter, the State Snowmobile Association wrote a letter, State Trails wrote a letter in requesting that Pete was selected. And so pretty happy that he was selected. Him and his wife were able to fly back to Green Bay for the convention and receive his award. In addition to that, what receiving the Snowmobile Dealer of the Year in the US does is it puts you up against Canada for the International Snowmobile Dealer of the Year, which Pete also won. So congratulations to them, because that now puts Pete in September, I think the 20th, he will be inducted into the International Snowmobile Hall of Fame, which is the best, the highest award you can receive in that group. So very well deserved. Can't congratulate Pete enough and thank him for what he's done. You don't get these awards by just being a nice guy, even though he is, but that's not what it's about. So congratulations, Pete, and all of his folks. On the 13th, attended the Rock Springs Chamber Luncheon, where suicide prevention and mental health were discussed for about 45 minutes. Also on the 13th, I met with Fred Von Ahrens and Aaron Reichel from Genesis Alkali to discuss their operations. Their presentation was very educational, and while I was aware of their mining and processes, I did learn quite a few things, so I know more than I did know. But I'd like to thank them for taking the time to meet with me. So all this seems like a short report. Like all of you, I spent a fair amount of time working on budget and numbers and trying to understand, and talked with Krishina and Rebecca. And so I too would hope that the process going forward, though, is greatly improved. I don't believe the Board of County Commissioners should have to be as intimately involved in this as we had to be this year out of pure necessity. So I'd like to thank you all for all of your time and efforts on this so we can get through the budget. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, special congratulations to Pete. What an honor. Any comments or questions for Commissioner Jones's report? If not, nice work, commissioners. This is going to wrap up the commissioner comments portion of the agenda, move us into tab D, which is the action and presentation items. We are about 30 minutes behind schedule here, but we have a much needed break. So with that, we'll take a 10-minute break, resume here at 11:10.
Not even.
Thanks. Call this meeting back to order. Where we left off was tab D under the action and presentation items. We're on to item number 2, which is a catering permit for the Eden Saloon and RV Park for the Olivia Harms concert on July 21st, 2024. I believe to present this today is Clerk Lane, who's multitasking. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Sorry about that. The streaming wasn't going. Yes, today we have an application for a catering permit put in by the Eden Saloon and RV Park for the Olivia Harms concert that's going to take place on July 21st, 2024.
Questions on this catering permit, Commissioners? If not, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the catering permit.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Toman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Moving along into item number 3, we've got resolution 2406-CC-01, a resolution authorizing a 3% cost of living adjustment to eligible county employees. And we'll hand it back to Clerk Lane.
Okay, good morning again. Before you have the a Commissioner Resolution 24-06-CC-01 that is to discuss a 3% cost of living adjustment for all eligible employees. This resolution has to take place before the budget can be approved because the cost of living is in there. Or not, it's just presented to you so that it is ready to go for Thursday. Last year, we did not do this in advance and we had to come back in July and make this happen because it has to be done by resolution.
Thank you, Cindy. Questions on the resolution that's been prepared, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
get our options right here. We can approve this now and hope we budget enough money for it. Or we can add it to our agenda on budget day and approve it on budget day.
We can, but then we'll have to bring 2 budgets to you, one with the 3%, one without, so we could get that ready if you needed that.
Further comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Toman?
I thought we already did discuss this as a board earlier, and that's why.
We did. It's just a
Being brought
matter
to
of
us.
formulating it by resolution.
I would make a motion to approve the resolution.
We have a motion by Commissioner Toman to approve resolution 2406-CC-01. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
I support this because regardless of what other cuts we make in our budget this afternoon, I'm committed to providing a COLA increase to our employees. I think that's my number one priority in a budget. So I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. I know it's been all over the place as far as the budget goes this year, and we still have plenty of work to do this afternoon, but in some of the calculations that I've been trying to figure out how to balance, I have not taken away the cost of living. So I too support moving forward with it as presented. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, as I've previously stated, I fully support this. I think that our employees are our most important asset. We've said that for a long time. I think this actually shows that we're putting something behind that, so I fully support also.
Agreed. Okay. Do you have a motion and a second on the table? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Moving right along under tab D is item number 4. We've got a request for the approval of the UMR 2024 financial renewal amendment. And with us this morning is HR specialist Brenda Rail. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, County Commissioners. Before you is the request for the 2024 UMR Financial Renewal Amendment. One significant difference between this contract and last year's is that this year we've decided that we weren't going to continue our contract with Accolade. Accolade in 2021 was contracted with to provide services to employees to help them to navigate their county employee benefits. Unfortunately, they really didn't deliver what we had anticipated. We had many complaints against them for the customer service that they were providing. So instead of contracting with Accolade, we've decided to contract with UMR to provide a similar service. It's called Plan Advisor. In contracting with UMR, it's going to be a cost savings of approximately $88,000. One other item to note is that although there's not an increase to the medical fees this year, there will be a 3% increase next year, which will be approximately $4,000. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Brenda. We appreciate the savings. If you could come up with about 3.5 more million, we would greatly appreciate
We'll
that.
work on it.
Questions for this approval, commissioners? If not, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to approve UMR 2024 Financial Renewal Amendment.
You have a motion to approve by Commissioner Tolman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up under tab D is item number 5. We've got a request to apply for additional Wyoming Library Multipurpose Community Facility Program grant funding. With us today is our Library Director, Lindsay Travis, as well as Grants Manager, Christina Marshall. Good morning to you, Lindsay.
Good morning, Chairman West, Commissioners. This month, the state of Wyoming, the Wyoming State Library announced that the state has an additional $8.4 million in capital construction funds available through the Wyoming Library Multipurpose Community Facility Program for library projects that directly enable work, education, and health monitoring. The funds are available by a grant to the state of Wyoming through the U.S. Department of Treasury Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, the fund that was created through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The library system, which has been awarded funds through this program for our library meeting room renovations, is seeking to apply for additional funding through the second grant cycle. If we are awarded another grant, the funds will be used to replace the HVAC at the White Mountain Library. As you are aware, the estimated cost for that system is $1,165,000. As the White Mountain Library is housed in a county-owned facility, I am asking you today for permission to apply for these capital construction funds and to allow Grants Manager Christina Marshall to help us in writing that grant.
Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay, we appreciate your efforts here too. Is the application for the full 1.165?
Yes, that's what we might ask for a little bit more for inflationary costs as well.
Agency.
Mhm.
Well, kudos to you. I know when that came through, as we're going through the budget shortfalls, there was a big panic for us, and hopefully we can help you get that award to help us balance on this side of the aisle too. So thanks for your forward thinking on that.
Thanks.
Questions for this application, commissioners? If not, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
I move to approve allowing the library and Christina Marshall to move forward on a application for a grant. I'm not going to try to say the initials.
We do have a motion to approve the request and allow our grants manager to apply for the additional Wyoming Library Multipurpose Community Facility Program grant as presented by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lindsay. Appreciate it. Next under tab D is item number 6. Thanks, Christina. We've got a library board appointment. And at this time, I'd hand it over to our liaison, Commissioner Richards.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to reappoint Megan Jensen and Deborah Sutton to additional terms on the library board.
Yeah, excuse me, there's two that we're fulfilling. We do have a motion to reappoint both Megan Jensen and Deborah Sutton to the library board by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on the appointments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Is everyone good? We can skip over this break.
I think so.
That will move us right along into item number 8, which is a Memorial Hospital Sweetwater County Annual Report. And with us today is CEO Irene Richardson and members of her team.
Thank you so much.
That's my favorite color. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I like that color.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No candy.
Thank you. Got all the goodies. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, County Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to have some time to give you an annual report on what we're doing here at the hospital. My name is Irene Richardson. I'm the CEO of Memorial Hospital of Sweetwater County, and with me, I have our Board President, Barbara Sawada. I have our Chief Financial Officer, Tammy Love, and then our Director of Community Outreach and Volunteer Services, Lena Warren. Usually I always ask my leaders at the hospital to send me all the wonderful things that they did all year long. And when I put that in the presentation, it was about 140 slides. And so I've condensed it out of respect for your time, but I would really appreciate if I could have some time after the budget is done and after the new fiscal year has started to maybe have a chance to come back and give you guys a more detailed presentation, because I think I'd love to share with you all of the amazing things that we're doing, but this is kind of a high level overview of the things that we've done over the years. So maybe we'll be able to do that in an upcoming meeting. That up there? Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to start just by again thanking you for allowing us to come and share some time with you. I'm just going to give you just a high level overview of what we've done all year. We've had a really great year at the hospital. I'd like to start by talking about the County Maintenance Fund. We're very grateful for the funding that you guys give us for the County Maintenance Fund. We want to be able to maintain the building. It was built in 1978. We've been able to take care of a lot of deferred maintenance over the last several years. And I think that's very important because I believe that replacement cost for that building would be somewhere north of $200 million. So I want to make sure that we do the best job that we can to maintain that building for many, many years to come. And so we are grateful for the assistance that you all give us. I think it's very important. And again, I just want to say thank you for doing that. We were able to address a lot of the infrastructure with some CARES Act money, and then also just cash flow from operations that we've been able to address some of the issues. We do feel like accountability and transparency are paramount when funds are distributed to public entities. So with the funding that you give us for maintenance and for Title 25, I have given you a reconciliation of all of that so that you guys can see exactly where those monies go. I think it's very important to be accountable as a public entity. And also, okay. So just kind of an executive update. Here at the hospital, at Memorial Hospital, Sweetwater County, we strive to realize our vision of becoming the community's trusted healthcare leader by providing high quality, excellent healthcare and an excellent patient experience through our person-centered care culture, teamwork, increasing market share, new services, and enhanced medical staff development. And I've left you guys with our Meet the Team poster. Those are all of our physicians and our non-physician providers, our nurse practitioners and our physician assistants with their specialty and their phone numbers. And so you can look over that whenever you have an opportunity. The first thing I'd like to do is thank our staff at the hospital. Our staff is very talented, very highly skilled and compassionate and kind. And I'm so proud of them for what they've done. They work very, very hard for the patients of our community. I think Sweetwater County is very fortunate to have such highly skilled people delivering healthcare here in Sweetwater County. They're very devoted to our patients, and I am very grateful for them. So I just want to give a huge shout out to our staff because I think they really deserve it, and I couldn't ask for a better staff. I'd also like to thank our Board of Trustees for their continuous commitment to advancing healthcare in Sweetwater County. They've been a great board. They have good direction, just right there with us every step of the way, and they're always accessible to us. So thank you to the commissioners for appointing a great board for us. And then also thank you to the commissioners. Appreciate everything that you guys do for us. I feel like we have a lot of really good collaboration going with the commissioners, with the board, and with the hospital. So we really appreciate that relationship. So a couple of highlights for the year. We were ranked as the #1 statewide hospital for social responsibility. The scores were based on health equity, value of care, patient outcomes, including inclusivity, pay equity, community benefit, avoiding overuse, cost efficiency, clinical outcomes, patient satisfaction, and patient safety. I think it was really important, and we got a lot of kudos for receiving that award. We were also able to introduce robotic surgery with the Da Vinci robot. We're very, very proud of that. We were able to obtain that with some assistance from the foundation, from the Memorial Hospital Foundation. And we started doing those procedures last summer. All 3 of our general surgeons are trained on the Da Vinci robot, and we're hoping to start the gynecological and urological procedures soon. So we're very excited about that. We also introduced the Mako robot in orthopedics to assist with total knee and hip replacements. And as far as providers, Dr. Kyle Hoffman joined our general surgery team, and his wife, Dr. May Poundstone, joined our hospitalist team. She's a pediatric and adult hospitalist. We had a very successful audit with no significant deficiencies, no material deficiencies, and no audit adjustments. We are really proud of the fact that, you know, our financials are very, very accurate throughout the year. That allows us to make really good, sound decisions throughout the year because we know that we have, you know, reliable financials. And again, very successful audit, and kudos to our staff, Tammy and her staff, for such a great audit. We also welcome the Joint Commission in December for their triennial survey. Of course, you know, we're Joint Commission accredited. We're really proud of that. The survey was very, very successful, and the Joint Commission deemed us fully accredited. So we are very, very well prepared for our Joint Commission survey. We have a continuous survey readiness team, and we meet biweekly on that. And so kudos to the staff for doing such an excellent job on that. And then we also, our laboratory received the College of American Pathologists accreditation. We moved from Joint Commission to the CAP survey. This is just going to give us more resources, and it's just considered the gold standard for laboratories. And we were awarded that accreditation as well. In December, we hosted our community Merry Birthday Party. We celebrated our community Christmas party and our 130th year of serving the healthcare needs of Sweetwater County. We're pretty proud of that. And so we were able to have a nice community event for that. We, of course, you know, I'll talk a little bit more about our culture in a little bit, but we also submitted our application for the Plaintree Excellence in Person-Centered Care in December, and we're still waiting to hear on that. We also did have a very successful Red Tie Gala. I'd like to thank the community for their support of our amazing hospital. It was very, very, very successful. And again, I'd like to thank our foundation and the community for all the support with that. Of course, you know, most importantly, we've had, again, a lot of construction, a lot of maintenance that we've done to the hospital. One of the ARPA grants that we received was for our laboratory renovation and expansion. It was a matching grant. So we were awarded funds from the state. We want to thank our county commissioners for giving us matching funds for that, and also our foundation. We couldn't do it without those matching funds. So we appreciate that. We had our groundbreaking ceremony, and several of the commissioners were there. We appreciate your guys' attendance there. We actually did break ground. So we're pretty excited about that. We were also awarded one more grant with ARPA grant for the medical office building front entrance expansion, and we're currently working on that. The reason we wanted to do that project was because we're just growing. We're really actually kind of busting at the seams at the hospital as far as volume, and we just wanted to give some more room there. It's actually the waiting room in the front entrance, and we want to expand the doors that go out to the parking lot so that we can have a little bit more room there. So that's also a matching grant. We're going to do the matching funds from our cash flow from operations. We also began work on a 10-year master plan this year. I think it's really important to kind of look to the future to see what the future of healthcare is going to be, and what we need to do to get ready for that. We wanted to look at some of the maintenance, some of the space that we have. We've already outgrown the medical office building. We've outgrown the hospital, and we've outgrown our building at 3000 College Hill. So we continue to grow, and we want to make sure that we can meet the needs of the healthcare needs of the community. So we're just working on that. The company that we contracted with has kind of preliminarily showed us their report. We're going to share that with our Building and Grounds Committee, and then we'll be sharing that with our board as well. Our Board of Trustees and the senior leadership team attended a strategic planning retreat in November. We did receive input from all levels of the hospital. We received input from staff, leaders, medical staff, senior leaders, and Board of Trustees. And the way that we did the strategic plan was to first kind of get, we did a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I asked all the different groups to give me kind of their analysis of what that looked like. And when we finally got to the retreat, and it was the board and the senior leaders, we had input from our medical staff, from the leadership team, from the senior leadership team and the board. And we all identified the same strengths, the same weaknesses, the same opportunities and threats. And the consultant that helped us do the strategic plan was very impressed. She said, you guys are in good alignment with what you have there, that everybody is able to identify those things. And you know, having not done that exercise together, I think it was really kind of nice that everybody really understands the hospital's needs. And so we did create our 2024 through 2027 strategic plan with our new pillars, with our pillars, but new goals under the pillars. So of course, you know, our mission is compassionate care for every life we touch. You'll see at the end here, I have kind of some of the volume numbers of the hospital for the last year, and you'll see we touch a lot of people's lives at the hospital. And so we always said that we know we provide, excuse me, excellent quality healthcare. We do. We have very, very highly skilled staff, and I'm very proud of them. And how we provide that is important to us so that we can make sure that our patients have a good experience at the hospital. Our vision to be the community's trusted healthcare leader, and our values, excuse me, to be kind, to be respectful, to be accountable, to embrace excellence and work collaboratively. And then finally, kind of our pillars for the strategic plan. These are the same ones that we had. The consultant was really impressed with the structure of our strategic plan. And so inside of those different pillars, we created goals based on the SWOT analysis from all of the different groups. So for the patient experience, we think it's very important that we make sure that our culture, which is our person-centered care culture, that we strive to do that every single day. And I think we've done an excellent job with the culture at the hospital. We want to make sure that our community knows that we're here for them. We want to make sure that they get the services they need, they have access to our care, and that they're going to have a good experience. And of course, that the healthcare is going to be excellent and of quality care. Our patient experience, we have goals inside that so that we can improve our scores on those surveys that we give out to our patients. So we've set some goals in there. We also have in quality and safety measures in some of those quality measures. We want to make sure that our care is high quality and safe for our patients and our staff. So we have some goals inside that pillar. We also have community growth and services. I think it's very important to be good community partners. We're the county hospital. We want to make sure that we support our county, and we ask that the county supports us as well. So we want to make sure that we are out there. We're getting the services that the community wants and needs, and we're listening and being good community partners. And so I think it's important we have some goals within that as well, to get out and give more presentations to the community, let them know what we're doing, and to bring the services that the community wants. The employee experience is very important to us. We want to make sure that we recruit and retain our staff. I think it's important because our staff obviously is very important, and we want to make sure that they have a good experience at the hospital. It's costly and to have staff turnover, so we want to reduce our turnover in that pillar, and so we have goals around that. And then also make sure that the employees have a good experience working at the hospital as well. Financial stewardship, I think it's very important to be very financially minded. Obviously, we get the assistance for the maintenance from the commissioners, but we also contribute to that through our cash flow from operations. So when we receive cash flow from operations every year, we reinvest that back into the hospital or the community, reinvest back into our staff, into the building, into equipment, and into the community. And I think it's important for us to do that. We see all the patients that come into the hospital. We reinvest our funds right back here into Sweetwater County. And I think that's important because when our patients come to see us, that money goes right back into the community. And so I think that we have really good goals around our financial stewardship pillar as well. And I think it's very important, again, to have this hospital here that is a full service hospital and sees all the patients. Finally, I'd like to give you guys kind of a little overview of the number of patients that we see every year. It's a lot. This isn't all of them, but if you guys can see, the emergency room, we see over 16,000 people. Are projecting that for this fiscal year. Almost 80,000 clinic visits for this fiscal year. almost 60,000 laboratory visits, 28,000 medical imaging visits, over 2,000 inpatient admits, over 5,700 patient days, over 450 births, over 2,100 surgeries, over 5,000 dialysis treatments, over 3,500 cancer center treatments, over 2,200 physical therapy visits, over 12,000 respiratory, cardio, and sleep lab visits, over 3,400 cardiac rehab visits, and over 138,000 patient visitor employee meals served. And then also over 416,000 pounds of laundry that we do, which is almost as much as my son can generate. So that's kind of what we've been doing at the hospital. Again, we've had a wonderful year. I'm really proud of our staff and our board for the support that they've given us, our staff for the hard work that they've done. We continue to break records as far as volume and revenue this year. We've done a remarkable job with managing all those patients, and we continue to grow. And I just want to thank again the commissioners for allowing us to come and show you what we've been doing. And again, just ask respectfully if I could come back and give a more detailed overview if you guys have some time in the upcoming months.
Thanks, Irene. We appreciate the annual report. Lots of good things happening up there as always, and certainly a braggable congratulations on the #1 hospital for social responsibility. I think, it's pretty obvious in your plan there that there's a good vision moving forward for the hospital and lots of exciting things that the community can be proud of. So we look forward to helping support that and wish you all well as you continue to march forward. So
Thank you.
comments or questions, Commissioner Jones?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Irene, thanks for coming. I've reported several times on all the good things that are going on at the hospital. So I don't think it's any surprise that I support the hospital in a huge way. It's the only hospital we have, county hospital in Sweetwater County. So appreciate what you're doing, but I think some of the things that kind of stick out to me, the robots, of course, I think are huge. That's great advance. The increased visits without an increased population only says one thing, and that's that you're doing good things up there. So I think your numbers speak for themselves. We are going to have conversation about an MOU and then, of course, the depreciation fund. So just made me think when you handed this, the reconciliation out. Can you kind of talk just briefly about the how you ended up with $950,000 that you didn't spend when typically I know you could have, and or in the past years always have. So just kind of the reasoning behind it. How did you get from a normal year of spending all that the county assists you with, and then to this year having substantial amount left over?
So in prior years with the maintenance fund, we were using that fund for obviously operational maintenance, and then also capital for the bigger projects, because things in hospital and healthcare isn't cheap. And so last year we changed that. So last year we said we weren't going to do the capital projects with the maintenance funding. So I had asked the commissioners if we could maybe consider creating a depreciation fund or some type of maintenance fund for the hospital that we could carry over, so that we could accumulate a bigger balance so that we could be able to take care of some of those larger projects that are multi-million-dollar projects. And so our goal was to kind of be able to save that so that we can start this maintenance fund. So again, this was something that we envisioned the county would keep. It would be your money with earmarked for the hospital. And then in maybe, 2 or 3 years when there was a sufficient balance accumulated, we could come and request that funding for a bigger project. Because if we to use that money year over year for routine maintenance, it would be, a lot of the maintenance that we do is big projects and we weren't able to carry that over. We determined that last year, that we weren't able to carry those over fiscal years. So that's kind of what our thought process was with that. We thought maybe we could start having some seed money for that, some type of depreciation fund that like I said, the county would keep, that would be earmarked for the hospital.
And I know there's been a lot of conversation about kind of what's kicked all of this off, really. I think initially was capital versus maintenance and what have you. And you and I've talked a few times, several times, but I know you had shared with me some information on capital maintenance. So I think that's probably where some heartburn might have come in initially was, you know, as the money being spent, how it's designed. And I think you are, but I think it could probably be argued from now until the end of time as far as maintenance, capital maintenance. I know that, like I say, the things you've shared with me, the articles you've shared with me makes it pretty clear in my mind that what you've done all along is right, and just have chosen to be a little smarter and plan more for the future. So.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Again, some of the, you know, when we're in the middle of getting our fiscal year 2025 budget approved, a lot of those maintenance projects are multi-million-dollar projects. And so I think it'd be wise to be able to accumulate that. And of course, we're going to do the same on the hospital side, right? A part of our strategic plan is to create a depreciation fund, our own depreciation fund, that's the equivalent to our total depreciation expense, so that we can be able to have some funding to do some of these bigger projects. Because we've got to think down the road 5 or 10 years to anticipate some of those bigger projects that are going to occur. And that's what we're trying to create. So whenever, you know, again, part of our strategic planning goals are to contribute some of our cash flow from operations to that fund as well. And so that we can set the hospital up for future success whenever we need to, you know, maintain, you know, things like, you know, operating room or things like boilers and things like that. Those things are not cheap. And so that was our thought process. And again, we feel like we're putting also, you know, we're setting up our own depreciation fund as well. And I think that's just, I think it's good planning for the hospital for the future.
We're gonna have lots of discussions today, so I figured it was only fair to give you a chance to answer for what's gone on.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I think there's definitely, you know, we talked about it like Commissioner Jones said about, you know, the difference between capital spending and routine maintenance. I think it's all maintenance. Again, and that's why I just, you know, respectfully ask the commissioners to maybe be able to create a fund that we could accumulate some, a balance in that would be able to address some of those future needs. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Mr. Tolman?
Yes. How do you see us funding it? I mean, is there a set amount of a maintenance fund that we give you now? I mean, is there a predetermined percent, or how do we determine that?
You know, it depends. Again, depending on your guys's, what you guys have from the revenue, we use what we need through routine maintenance. Our goal was to create, through the strategic plan, our goal was to have $2 million in that county maintenance fund at the end of 3 years. So that's what we were kind of looking at. And we also have a goal for our own maintenance fund in that budget, in that strategic plan as well, to have a balance equal to what our depreciation expense is by the end of 3 years. And that should hopefully take care of some of that deferred maintenance. And again, we'll still contribute, we'll continue to contribute to that. But sometimes projects are maybe $600,000 or $700,000. And it'd be nice if there was a balance that we could access to be able to address some of those capital needs that we have.
I guess I'm still not clear is, I know you submit a certain amount, but how do we determine what this maintenance account is? Is there some formula or?
There's not really. We had asked, when we submitted the budget, we were asked to keep it flat. I think Commissioner Jones asked, would we consider, could we take a decrease, in that amount? And yes, obviously, we're willing to take whatever you guys are willing to give us. And so there's not a set dollar amount, Commissioner Toman. It's just more, if we can agree to a dollar amount, for maintenance that, we manage it throughout the year, and then we say at the end of the year, we have this balance left over. Let's just say it's $500,000. Could we put that in this depreciation fund so that we could carry it over fiscal years and
Okay,
accumulate a
yeah,
balance?
Thank you, that makes.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think when we discussed this, and it's been a few months ago, so my memory might not be completely right, but the whole idea was we would set aside whatever we could. I mean, every year is going to be different. We're obviously seeing this year drastically different. So the amount is up to us. We control, and that's what this upcoming MOU discussion will be. The MOU is pretty much put together so that we decide the amount, we hold the money, we retain any interest, we pretty much control it. And then if the hospital has a project, they can come in front of us and request funds out of that account. But there is no set amount every year. We did have some conversations about that, but then that kind of ties our hands, and that didn't really seem like a good plan.
Additional comments, questions on the report? Yeah, I mean, obviously that's next up on the agenda is the MOU, and I understand in theory what the goal is, and I think it's an interesting option. And, as a county, we don't even really have a capital fund set aside. I mean, we do-ish, but it's kind of just combined annually with our operating budget. And, we have a little capital reserve that we established last year, but it's difficult for me. I can see what the goal is on your part, and I'm glad to hear that you guys were putting money towards a depreciation account too, because I wasn't clear on that. But what I don't like about it is for both parties, it's neither guaranteed. I mean, I guess if we're in full control and we put $500,000 into it this year, but then next year, we're up against budget constraints and we've pulled everywhere we can, is that fair to strip it back and take it down to nothing? I think it's always good to plan for the future and, to try and account for ongoing, maintenance and capital improvement needs, but I kind of view it as it's a good idea. It's kind of like building reserves, but when you need them, you spend them and then you hope that you can start over. And I think that makes it tough for you all too, to have that certainty that that money is going to be there, because what prevents us from stripping it away in the event that it's needed? And I've served in other capacities where that's exactly what happened. You had a storm sewer account of $2 million and we had to use it all, so then you start that process over. And I guess you can argue that's part of accounting and budgeting, but if ultimately the goal is to set money aside, that's money unutilized in the maintenance fund, to then in a few years when things get bad or you have a new administration up here and they take it all back, I don't know that we really accomplished anything. So, I see both sides. I'm trying to reason with it long term. Struggling with it a little bit, but
I understand that. I mean, and maybe we could, put language in there in the MOU so that we could protect, the hospital and something like that. Or we can maybe go back to how it was and we were able to use some of that maintenance funding. I mean, if it was $1.5 million, let's say, we did use some of it for capital construction. Maybe go back to the way that we used to do things prior to last year.
I guess that's a question I would have, because like the lab, for instance, you all came, I realized that was a match for the ARPA, grant and all of that, but at that time, the previous administration agreed to I think it was 2.5 million. And then you came before us when we took over for the second project and asked for the additional $500,000, and we granted that, which It's part of our deficit today that we're trying to work through because apparently that wasn't accounted for, so that's coming out of reserves. But do you see it differently than that versus just coming before us and that, you know, asking us to help you out with a improvement that we fund out of whatever reserve account versus this depreciation account? I mean, I guess I don't see what the difference is if ultimately it's in our full control anyway.
No, you know, I guess it just, I guess it does depend, you know, on what you guys would have in revenues for any, you know, particular year. You know, I don't know, again, how that would be prioritized if we came to you guys with a project. You know, let's just say a $1.5 million project, would that be approved? Or I'm just saying, it would be nice if we could create a fund for that so that we could have it for a specific purpose like that. Rather than maybe in 2 years, we come to you guys with a project and then someone else comes with a project. How do you guys prioritize that? And so that's why we thought maybe it'd be nice to have this particular fund that was just a hospital maintenance fund. And again, I think it would probably take time to build that up. But I think it would be there, and I think it would be, you know, something that, again, maybe we could put language in the MOU that says that that money is specifically set aside for hospital maintenance, capital construction, just to kind of protect the hospital. And like we said, you know, I mean, commissions are going to change over the years so that we can have that protection, I guess, in the MOU.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Slaughter.
if I could go back to the time when I was liaison to the hospital, I think this concept came about at that point in time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the whole concept behind this was to have the money be able to remain in the account for the hospital maintenance over the course of a fiscal year. Because at the current time, what takes place is if you haven't expended that money just comes through to us as carryover and rolls into our budget. So this was a mechanism for us to set that money aside and you to retain it over several years to be able to accrue money for capital projects. I see the concept as a really good concept. I see problems with it inherent. We can try and set this up in good faith. And 2 years from now, this can go away. We certainly don't want to see that happen. I don't think anyone wants to see that happen. But I think that's a problem, and we need to recognize that. And if this is a direction that we want to go, I think we need to put further work into it to make sure that we are covering all of our bases on that. Because this is something that did come up in our discussion 2 weeks ago on our budget. It was something that we looked at. In looking at what you provided us today, it gives me a little bit better insight in what your plan is. And it looks to me like in good faith, you have not expended as much money from your $1.48 million that you anticipated as revenue for the hospital this year, and had set aside $900,000 thinking that would be going towards this depreciation account. So I think you've done that in good faith. I think in good faith, we had talked about this, but we had never really gotten to the point where we had agreed we were going to do it. So I think when we get done with this conversation is going to continue, but I think you've done a good job in providing information for us. I think there's just a little bit more work maybe, and maybe we'll find out in the MOU it is taken care of, but I see that there are some holes there maybe.
Okay, yeah. It really is in good faith. It's in an effort to create a fund to be able to manage. We don't want to be in a position where we have to take care of deferred maintenance. I think that's really not wise. I think that we're just trying to set ourselves up so that we can have some funding for that and take care of some of the maintenance. Again, I have to say we've done a really nice job of taking care of a lot of the deferred maintenance, but we want to get ahead of it. And so we're just offering options. That's an option. Again, we want to make sure that you guys know we have skin in the game too, that we're creating our own maintenance fund so that we can take care of those things, because again, whatever cash flow from operations we get goes back into building, staff, equipment. It just goes right back into that. And we've been trying to do that. We've been trying to create, we're getting there. We're trying to get to this balance that we have goals set for this 3-year strategic plan. And I think that that's really, like I said, I think it's a good idea. And always, we try to make sure that when we manage our cash, we have to have 65 days of cash on hand for our bond covenants. We want to make sure that we have additional cash for capital, our capital budget, and then also for our building and our maintenance budget. So, and then kind of improve our days of cash on hand. So those are our goals within our strategic plan so that we can start accumulating these funds and so that we can have them for years to come.
So Irene, I guess, help me clarify that. You said we can go back to the way that we used to do it. So now I'm showing, obviously, we have call it $1.5 million for the maintenance fund. But you're saying that capital has been eliminated from that, so it's maintenance only? And so is that why you're spending less, with the idea that because you're not spending any on capital, you would roll that off into this account because your maintenance needs are less than they are with the capital? And is that,
Yeah, I
I
mean.
guess, part of the confusion? Because you got capital improvements, you got capital construction. So what is capital, right?
I mean, in my mind, it's all maintenance. It really is. I think capital, capital, we call it, I guess, capital because of our accounting distinction of the cost of it and the life of it. But some of those projects, I think last year when we talked about how we were using that fund, that's when we did the MOU last year, so that we would just use it for the routine maintenance and not capital, because we were carrying that money over for capital funds. And it was how we were invoicing. Do you remember when we were?
Yeah.
And so, so if we could go back to that method, I think that would be okay. If we could use that 1.5 million and we could be able to do it like we used to be able to do it. And we were using it for some capital projects, not huge capital projects, but maybe $500,000 or $600,000 capital projects. But when we look at a balance of $2 or $3 million, that should take over like some of our laundry issues that we've had over the years. We have, the S units, and I won't be able to talk to them exactly right, but some of that that infrastructure that costs maybe 1.5 or $2 million. And that was kind of I guess, what kind of triggered us to say, hey, if we could kind of accumulate this money in a fund, then we could come back and say, we're ready to work on this project. It's $1.3 million. Can we use $1.3 million of that balance to work on this project?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Tillman.
Well, I don't see why we couldn't have a special reserve account, because we've done it with some other things, even though we might have slipped through the cracks on us or tried to slip through the cracks. Have a special account that we maintain, but that is designated only for the hospital use. And as I see industrial siding money, Commissioner Slaughter, as we're getting some of that, maybe that would free up some of the county money that we could put into that account for you. We might not be able to put industrial siding money into that account, but would free up some of what money we'd budgeted to give you. Just an idea. I don't know. Do they have 6 penny? Yeah. Don't they have 6 penny? No. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was just trying to find another pot of money.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, again, I do think it's going to take some time, right? So if we, whatever, let's just say, if you ask us to keep the budget flat or whatever, let's just say it's $1 million that we get for maintenance this year. If we look at it throughout the year and we say, for routine maintenance, it's going to cost us, $400,000 or $500,000. The other $500,000 kind of, we'll manage it that way, and we'll say the other $500,000 we would like to place in this fund, so that we could, again, start building this up. And our goal in the strategic plan is to have that balance be $2 million by the end of 3 years. And again, it's just going to be kind of managing those maintenance funds. So that we can say our goal is to have enough money to finish this project, whatever that is, in 2 or 3 years.
Well, and maybe the capital committee could help, but then everybody's going to want a special account.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Richards.
I guess that brings the question. We have, what, a half a dozen component entities that are all going to want the same depreciation fund. And in the end, that's our job as a board to look at all the capital projects of all of our core and our components and make those decisions every budget session. So I get the aspect of this, but I think doing just this one MOU in a vacuum without looking at the 30,000-foot view of how we do this with all of our capital needs, I think is a disservice. I think it needs to be part of a larger discussion.
Delegate it to the capital committee. But then that dilutes your request.
Any additional discussion on the annual report? I know we're kind of bouncing back and forth, but. Okay, well, thanks, Irene. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you for the report. I know we kind of sidetracked there and went MOU, but obviously important conversations, so.
It is. I appreciate you guys, having the conversation again. We, I don't know. I just, again, we just want to make sure that we maintain, do proper maintenance on the hospital. That was just kind of an idea that we had come up with. Again, if we could definitely come up with routine maintenance for all of that. But it's just that some of those bigger projects, I think it would be nice if we could kind of carry that over. But again, it's completely up to the discretion of the commissioners. We're just stewards of the hospital, and we want to make sure that we do a good job and maintain it properly. That's all we're trying to do.
No, we appreciate that. It's once you fall behind, you can never get caught up. So
It's hard.
I really do appreciate the forward thinking and trying to plan for the future and set those needs aside, because we've got other areas that is not the case. And so, now it's costing us a significant amount of money, and we're trying to balance budget on top of that. So I understand the concept behind it. So appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Thanks to the team. All right, commissioners, that does bring us to item number 9 under the action and presentation items portion of the agenda, which is essentially a continuation of the discussion we just had. This is the county hospital depreciation account memorandum of understanding. Copy of that is within your packet. Commissioner Jones obviously has spent a lot of time on this. He and I had a few conversations. We've had John help us with establishing some of the verbiage within that. And I believe it's touched a few different departments between clerk and the treasurer and members of the hospital too. So I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the things that we also need to keep in mind is that statutorily, we're supposed to set this maintenance fund up. So it's obviously up to us each year how much it is, but that I think differentiates the hospital from any other organization who would want to have one of these accounts set up, is that by statute, we are required to do this. The hospital doesn't require us. They don't force us, nothing. It's in state statute. So that's one of the differences that I think we really need to keep in mind, and working with Mr. De Leon on this MOU, and thank you, because you rewrote it, I don't know, 6 times, however many times it was. So appreciate you working through this. But the idea was that we keep it as simple as possible, and it's clear that the county retains the money. It is set aside for the hospital, but the county retains the money, county controls the money, the county controls interest, And then the hospital would have to come in front of us with any requests. So I know the dollar figure is always going to be the wild card in it, right? Because every year we don't know what kind of money we're going to have or not have. So that's why we do the best we can with budgeting, but didn't want a dollar figure in there because there's no reason to lock us into $1 million a year for sake of argument. And then we have a year like what we're looking at now. And we have an agreement signed that says we have to put $1 million away. So didn't feel good about having an actual dollar figure in there. So it's kind of where we landed, but I think, the idea of planning ahead and being wise with the money was really what was driving this. And I think we can see by what they didn't spend this year that they're good stewards of the money and doing the right things and obviously putting their own money in, and then we're also following state statutes.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that a little bit. I mean, obviously, I've had some questions about it, and I first want to state that I fully support the hospital and the efforts that you all do up there. You do a terrific job, and it is, one of our gems of the community. And I again appreciate being proactive and trying to plan for future needs. And I have a hard time because I feel like we've overcomplicated the capital process, and we need to get some clarity on that next year with particularly the component units. Now the hospital is different because of the statutory requirement. And so, there's that too, but one side of the aisle is I don't want to be committed to $1 million a year because we never know where revenues are going to be. The other side is if we have $2 million in this account and then we strip it, then we're getting sideways with the hospital because they're not going to be happy about that. And, I don't want that to occur. I appreciate the transparency and, the list of the expenditures. I think that process works well. I can identify, trying to plan for larger expenses as well, but I've had a hard time with it this year because it seems like every day, if not every week, we're looking for more money. And, the $950,000, I guess, ask for the carryover for this account was cut back to $500,000 at our last workshop. And then, here we are again today, faced with another $3.5 million. And I struggle with rolling over $500,000 to an account when we're cutting our own county core projects and county core capital improvements. At the same time, the hospital didn't utilize some of that maintenance funding out of the $1.5 million because they anticipated putting it towards this account that didn't formally exist. And so, as with the entire budgeting process, we're caught in a pickle again on top of all the other needs within the county. And so I'm trying to look at it long-term on what's best for the county while still offering support, to the hospital. Obviously, the $3 million was a big lift that, we graciously supported that effort too. And so, I'm proud of that, but somehow we have to get there. And I guess the question is, where do we cut or where do we dip into to make that happen? And I'm not fully convinced that I'm there yet. So that's my comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Slaughter.
I'm looking at it just a little bit differently. I don't see the ongoing contribution to this account as being an issue. I see the initial funding as being our dilemma right now, because I think, as we did last year, we appropriated $1,448,215 for the hospital. In good faith, once again, I believe they felt like this account was going to be set up. And so rather than spend that full $1.4 million, they spent $500,000 of that, which left that $940,000 balance. I don't know that we had agreed that we were going to do this at this time. If we chose to agree, I think in the future, it's pretty simple because they have asked for, once again, an award for this year. I believe it's the same amount, $1,448,000. And I would believe that, and maybe that number is not correct, but whatever they asked for in this year, if they chose to fund some other way and did not expend that funding, whatever it was would go into that account. So it's something that we've already accounted for in our budget through the appropriation to the hospital in that budget. It's just looking at, once again, the problem becomes because we're retaining ownership through the MOU, it's a question of, are we going to take that money at that point in time or not? And that's the part of it I don't like. I don't like having the fact that at some point in the future, we just arbitrarily go against this agreement. Because I think, once again, if we're going to commit to it, we're committing to it. We want to try and help them set up this account. And if that's the case, then if we appropriate that funding, they don't use it, it should go into that account for their use. I'm not sure the way it's currently written that I can support it, once again, because I believe if we're retaining 100% control over that funding, there's too much of a likelihood that at some point in time, we get into a situation where we take from that fund. I don't want to do that. I think it's going against our good faith agreement that we've set up with them initially if we do that. So I'm not sure that I explained that well, but that's how I feel about it anyway, in looking at all of the facts as they presented today and with new information. I've looked at it a little bit differently.
Any other feedback?
John, any suggestions on changed language then? I mean, I don't know that there's a perfect MOU in this situation, I think is my concern. So, I think it's the right thing to do, that the hospital has some understanding that if they do what's right, we will too. But I see the point that if the money's sitting there, then 5 years from now, whoever's sitting up here could think they've got a pot of gold sitting there to solve a problem with, or put into anything. Doesn't even have to be a problem.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Jones, so a consideration for you is, remember, there are 4 different types of accounts that could exist for the hospital. One, of course, is the hospital maintenance fund. One is this depreciation fund, which, as Commissioner Jones identified, the statute does have some language specifically for the hospital that identifies a depreciation account relative to other types of entities. That being said, there's also, so you have the hospital maintenance fund, you have a depreciation account, which both the hospital can have one, and by statute, and the county can have one. Then you also have a cash carryover account. And then you also have by statute, which the hospital can have one of those. That's for the hospital. Then you can also have a capital account. So the statute specifically provides for an account for capital, which has some requirements as compared to a depreciation type of account. The capital account is for a sum certain and for a certain number of years. So that could be, Commissioner Jones, what an option, which would be identifying, which would be the board identifying, we want to accumulate a certain amount, and we want it to be hypothetically to get up to let's just say 2 million, whatever the amount was that you determined. And then that particular account has a carryover function established with it by statute. So by statute, if the maintenance fund isn't fully used, then that carries over into this capital account. So some of what I hear you saying could be something where you wanted a capital account versus a versus a depreciation account. Again, it's been, as Commissioner Jones identified, it's been sort of a process of trying to say, okay, let's try to just use maintenance for maintenance, and let's recognize that there's another category called depreciation, and there's yet another category called capital, and trying to figure out how to develop all of those. And the only other thing that I would say to that effect is that the hospital can also have, in addition to having a depreciation account, they can also have a capital account. And then by statute, those accounts that they would individually have does have a 10%, and I think we've talked about that a little bit, a 10% cap on it, 10% of their total revenues. So, but as far as the account that you guys create, I'm sure Commissioner Jones, we could sit down and try to come up with some language that would address Commissioner Slaughter's concerns there. If you guys want to earmark that, you certainly, I would imagine that there's ways to do that, but the capital account is the one that comes to mind as the easiest way to earmark that versus taking away authority from you as a board in general next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. That's a little bit, I guess, a little bit would require a little bit more finesse in putting that together. I hope that helps a little bit.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Slaughter?
not to belabor this, because we could talk about this all day and I don't want to do that. But if I understand you correctly, John, let's go back to the appropriation for this year again. Assume it was $1,448,215. If I'm understanding you correctly, we could identify $1 million of that to be used as maintenance and $448,000 that would go to a capital account. If we did that, is that a benefit as you see it to the hospital? Would that accomplish what you're looking to do at that point in time? And that would allow that, as you're saying, John, to do that. So I would prefer to see something set up that way rather than what we've got, but I'll just vote as I see, I guess, as we move forward, but.
I don't have any problems changing the language a little bit that way, as long as, I guess, both sides, as long as both sides are good with it. I think that's the question, or is there some reservation to even doing this at all? Because if there is, then, we need to probably get that out and see where we all stand on this. If we can have John rewrite yet another MOU, the way you're saying, and that's fine with me, if it's fine with the hospital, but just like to make sure that we're kind of in agreement that this is the direction we were going. I went back and watched the video of when we discussed this and asked if it needed a motion or anything, and was told no. So let's get this thing put to bed one way or another.
To me, it doesn't change anything, whether we call it a capital fund or a depreciation fund. I think the only difference there is the depreciation fund, we have full control over. The capital fund, it sounds like, has an element where the monies would roll over into the account for a specified time frame at a specified amount, which I guess would be locked towards the hospital. So I guess that's my heartburn with the whole thing. I mean, within our own capital committee, we've got projects like the events complex. We had monies that were underutilized within the capital, I guess, budget that we shifted to put towards this project or that project, or we're sharing or dipping into, shifting things around to make it work. It's a lot of money. It's a big conversation, and I hate to get locked into a guaranteed amount. I mean, that's kind of what we've argued on the MOU, that it's hard to commit to that, and I just think we're overcomplicating it personally. But I'm open to feedback. We do need to address the MOU that's before us, one way or the other. And I'm not sure that there's enough time to,
Should we just postpone it then?
we can.
If John writes a different one, then we can vote this one down and.
I guess the difficulty is we're up against the 10th hour here as far as budgeting goes, so it's hard to budget an amount into an account that doesn't exist, depending on what happens at the workshop this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
I think we always have the ability to budget money and put it in an account and decide what to do with it later.
Okay, well, I think we need some further discussion on which avenue is best. I mean, I'm getting the vibe that the MOU is probably not a go. We can either vote it down, we can postpone the discussion, figure out what we want to do with the budgeted amount, if anything. But
Mr. Chairman, I'm more inclined to postpone it and use it as a stepping stone to try to come up with a better idea, whether it's just making this particular MOU fit our needs more, or using it to come up with a better idea.
okay, someone want to make a motion?
Move to postpone the MOU.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jones to postpone the county hospital depreciation account MOU. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the postponement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Moving right along, we do have item number 10, which is a Memorial Hospital Board appointment. And at this time, I'd hand it over to our liaison, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to appoint Dr. Barbara Swada for another term on the hospital board.
We do have a motion to reappoint Dr. Barbara Sawada to serve on the Memorial Hospital Sweetwater County Board of Trustees by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Any discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Thank
Good
you for
job.
your service.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It's a
Barbara.
tough role. No doubt. We appreciate your leadership. Item number 11 is an airport board appointment. And at this time, I would hand it over to Commissioner Tolman.
I would recommend reappointing Dr. Peter Jensen.
I believe it's the only applicant on file as well. So we do have a motion by Commissioner Tolman to reappoint Dr. Pete Jensen to serve on the airport board of directors. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Any discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Next is the Community Fine Arts Board appointment. I believe for the expiring term of Mark
Mr.
Petrie.
Chairman.
What's that, Commissioner?
Is that I got this one?
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to reappoint Mark Pedri to another 3-year term beginning July 1st on the Community Fine Arts Board.
Do you have a motion to appoint Mark Pedri to fulfill the opening on the Community Fine Arts Board by Commissioner Richards? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on this appointment? Hearing none. Am I going too fast for you? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Item 13 is the Fiber Optics Telecommunication Cooperative Joint Powers Board. And I'd hand that over to our liaison.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve Tim Knight or to reappoint Tim Knight, excuse me.
Do you have a motion to reappoint Tim Knight to the Fiber Optics Telecommunication Cooperative Joint Powers Board by Commissioner Jones?
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Toman. Any discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion unanimous. Item 14 is a museum board appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to reappoint Mark Cott as a board member.
Have a motion by Commissioner Jones to reappoint Mark Cott to serve on the museum board. Do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Second by Commissioner Toman. Any discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is unanimous. Item 15 is a planning and zoning board appointment. Hand that over to Commissioner Richards.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to appoint John Jasperson to a 3-year term beginning July 1st to fill the open seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do you have a motion to appoint John Jasperson to the Planning and Zoning Commission by Commissioner Richards? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Slaughter. Discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye, but I think we, after the motion, should share our appreciation for the Angela Wilson's role as chairman for that for so many years.
You were in favor, Commissioner?
Yes, I
Okay.
will.
Motion passes unanimously. The next three commissioners, which are the Predatory Animal Board appointment, Solid Waste Disposal District for the Eden Valley Board appointment, and the Star Transit Board appointment. We have on the agenda, but we have received 0 applicants for any of those. So spread the word. We have advertised these a couple times. But if you know of anyone that's willing to serve, we do have some vacancies to fill.
Mr. Chairman, Sally, we didn't get anything from Jeff or I. He told me he sent it all in
For,
for Star Transit.
With that, we'll give Sally some time to see if she's got that one on file.
I've done some outreach.
Received
on-
nothing. Okay.
Nothing? Okay.
I've done outreach on Predator Board and Solid Waste in Eden. I'll just keep working, try to get the word out more.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to table those appointments or just ignore them for now?
Yeah, I think we can just ignore them because there's really no action to take. If you're okay with that, John, I left them on the agenda just for kind of an advertising opportunity to allow us to discuss the need for filling those roles. And I guess we'll wait until we get any applicants. With that, we almost caught back up. We We're set to go to lunch here and resume back at 1:45 to discuss the vacation of County Road 90, the American Methanol Road. So with that, we will break for lunch.